Chapter 29:40. Xiao Chen's words were like an oath that resonated between heaven and earth. After absorbing the power of all living beings, Xiao Chen seemed to feel the desire of all living beings. The desire to live in peace and to live on. It was so real that Xiao Chen really wanted to become the guardian of all living beings. No matter what, he wanted to protect the peace of all living beings. He would no longer allow the people to be treated like ants or tools by the spirit of the heavens and earth and the primogenitors like before. As soon as Xiao Chen finished speaking, the last of the power of faith drilled into his body in a frenzy. Their strength was completely different from before. Xiao Chen, Lin Yun, and the others had all reached the level of primogenitor under the infusion of the power of all living beings. Even little Qing couldn't underestimate this level of existence, because it was indeed enough to threaten little Qing. Little Qing stared gloomily at Xiao Chen and the others and said coldly, "You want to be the guardian of all living beings? Let's see if you have the ability to do so." After saying that, a towering aura erupted from little Qing's body and she charged directly at Xiao Chen. Seeing this, Xiao Chen and the others naturally wouldn't allow themselves to be captured without putting up a fight. Xiao Chen, Lin Yun, and Mo He immediately attacked and fought with Xiao Qing. If it were the previous Xiao Chen and the other two, they probably wouldn't have the ability to fight back against little Qing. However, it was different now. The three of them now possessed the strength of a primogenitor. Even in front of little Qing, they didn't show any signs of weakness. After fighting with the three of them, little Qing realized that the three of them weren't any weaker than the primogenitors. In particular, Xiao Chen and Lin Yun. If Moe's strength was comparable to the primogenitors, then Xiao Chen and Lin Yun's strength obviously surpassed the primogenitors. They surpassed the primogenitors and were comparable to little Qing. This made little Qing even more furious. What was this? Was this a rebellion against him, the spirit of the heavens? Little Qing didn't allow any resistance to exist. But now, after a fierce battle, little Qing didn't have the slightest advantage against Xiao Chen and the other two. Not to mention defeating him, he didn't even have much of an advantage. As for Ancestor He, he was currently engaged in an intense battle with the ancient living beings like the old tree. Ancestor He also displayed his terrifying strength when dealing with several ancient life forms by himself. This was the power given to them by all living beings. Amidst the fierce battle, Xiao Chen did not forget to say to the others, "Continue to move." The great beings from the various universes were continuously gathering. Secondly, Xiao Chen's purpose was to move them away from this place so that they would not continue to be poisoned by the land of creation. Now that Xiao Chen truly possessed the pinnacle of power in the world, Xiao Chen's thoughts naturally changed. Since he had the strength, why would he still want to live under someone else's roof? In the past, he could only choose the land of creation because he wanted to fight against the origin world. Then, after the estrangement between him and little Qing, Xiao Chen could only survive in the gap between the land of creation and the origin world. But now, everything was different. He had the strength to fight against the land of creation and the origin world. Since that was the case, he didn't have to worry about these things anymore. Xiao Chen wanted to give all living beings a true home. He wanted to create a new world while being chased by the land of creation and the origin world. A world formed by the will of all living beings. This was the opposite of Xiao Chen's current situation. Therefore, Xiao Chen stopped little Qing and said to everyone. He would take everyone away from here and then choose a place to create a true world. He would be responsible for protecting the safety of this world. Whether it was the origin world or the land of creation, nothing could stop him. As long as he had the strength, he could protect what he wanted to protect. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, everyone started to take action and rushed into the spatial tunnel. Looking at this scene, although little Qing was furious, she couldn't stop them at all. Faced with Xiao Chen, Lin Yun, and Helmet Mo, little Qing found it difficult to break through their blockade for the time being. They could only watch helplessly as the people of the various great cosmoses left through the spatial passageway. She cursed in her heart. At the same time, the primogenitors in the Nether Child universe and the other universes naturally noticed the changes in Xiao Chen and the others. At this moment, in the Netherchild universe, outside the Origin World's garrison. Ancestor Mu stood alone on the deck of the spatial spirit ship. His eyes flickered with a complicated light as he looked in the direction of Xiao Chen and Little Qing. Ancestor Mu could clearly feel that there were waves of intense battle aftereffects coming from that direction. Such battle aftereffects made even his heart palpitate. These were definitely not battle aftereffects that an ancient creature could have. It was obviously a battle between Little Qing and others. However, putting aside Little Qing, as a world spirit, it wasn't strange for him to have such battle strength. What was strange was the person fighting Little Qing. Ancestor Mu, who had long noticed the transformation of Xiao Chen and the others, said faintly, "The power of living beings." He had never thought that Xiao Chen and the others would suddenly obtain the power of living beings. It was because of the power of living beings that Xiao Chen and the others' strength had advanced by leaps and bounds and completed a qualitative change. They now had the ability to compete with Little Qing. Now, Xiao Chen and the others weren't afraid of Little Qing at all. It could even be said that they weren't afraid of the Origin World. In other words, Xiao Chen and the others also had the confidence to not be afraid of the Origin World. Originally, it should have been a situation of two tigers fighting each other. However, with the transformation of Xiao Chen and the others, it was slowly developing in the direction of a tripartite confrontation. The tripartite confrontation made the originally chaotic situation even more difficult to control because no matter which side it was, they had to deal with the other two sides. Ancestor Mu, do you think the world spirits can stop them? At this moment, Qinyan asked from the side. The battle aftereffects made even Ancestor Mu's heart palpitate, let alone an ancient creature like Qinyan. Facing the battle aftereffects of such a level, Qinyan couldn't even think of resisting. The gap was too big. At the same time, Qinyan was a little panicked by such a change. Who would have thought that this world could give birth to existences that were comparable to the primogenitors and the world spirits? They relied on the power of living beings. Could the world spirits really erupt with such power? Ancestor Mu only said faintly in response to Qinyan's question. A storm is coming. Everything will have to start from the beginning. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2941. Ancestor Mu sighed softly. As soon as he finished speaking, he ignored Qinyan, who was still in a daze, and turned around to return to the cabin. Ancestor Mu sighed softly. As soon as he finished speaking, he ignored Qinyan, who was still in a daze, and turned around to return to the cabin. Inside the cabin, Ancestor Mu sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. His spirit had already left his body. In the Origin World, the primogenitors gathered in the hall. Ancestor Mu, Ancestor Qing, Ancestor Qilin, Ancestor Bai, and the others were all gathered together. The 8 primogenitors appeared together. Although they did not come in person, it was obvious that Xiao Chen's matter had attracted their attention. The power of all living beings? The legend is actually true, Ancestor Qing said first. The primogenitors knew very little about the power of all living beings. They only knew that according to the legend, whoever obtained the power of all living beings would possess the strength to contend with the spirit of heaven and earth. Heaven and earth and all living beings were fundamentally equal. Although heaven and earth created all living beings, it did not mean that all living beings were slaves to heaven and earth. On the contrary, the power of all living beings could actually contend with the spirit of heaven and earth. However, since ancient times, no one had ever obtained this power. Therefore, as time passed, the world naturally forgot about this matter and thought that the power of all living beings did not exist. But now, the metamorphosis of Xiao Chen and the others seemed to have broken everything before. The power of all living beings was real. Moreover, after obtaining the power of all living beings, Xiao Chen and the others indeed possessed the strength to contend with the spirit of heaven and earth. The power of all living beings has appeared. What should we do now? Ancestor Bai chimed in as soon as Ancestor Qing finished his sentence. Right now, the Origin World did not only need to pay attention to the place of creation but also Xiao Chen and the others. Ancestor Qiu said in a deep voice. The battle between two tigers has turned into a tripartite confrontation. The situation in the future will probably become even more complicated. What do you think if we help the spirit of heaven and earth eliminate Xiaochen and the others? We can't do that. Putting aside whether or not the spirit of the world will agree to it, even if it does, with the support of the power of all living beings, we can actually kill it. Given the relationship between the primogenitors and little Qing, the possibility of them working together was not high. Moreover, it would not be easy to kill Xiaochen and the others. This was similar to the various primogenitors. Little Qing could defeat them, but killing them wasn't as easy as saying. Therefore, the Qilin ancestors' suggestion was quickly rejected by the other progenitors. Although no one said it aloud, the primogenitors knew very well that the rise of Xiaochen and the others was unstoppable and unavoidable. Since there was no way to stop the rise of Xiaochen and the others, the most important thing to do now was to wait and see what the outcome of this battle would be. While the primogenitors were discussing the countermeasures, on the other side of the place of creation, Dongfang led a group of experts to rescue Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao. Since he had completely fallen out with the land of creation, there was no way that Xiaochen would let his family stay in the land of creation again. Otherwise, if little Qing used his family as a threat, Xiaochen would really not know how to deal with it. This should have been an extremely difficult task. Even though Dongfang was an ancient life form, it was still extremely difficult to rescue people from the place of creation. However, just now, Dongfang had also obtained the power of all living beings, and his cultivation base had directly broken through to the primogenitor level. Dongfang's skyrocketing strength made him very confident. At the same time, he sighed inwardly. Was this the power and wish of all living beings? After absorbing the power of all living beings, Dongfang knew where the power came from. He also knew that it was actually the wish of all living beings. They hoped to have a guardian god to protect them, so that they would no longer be wantonly bullied and used by the experts of the world. With the power of all living beings, Dongfang quickly entered the place of creation. Now that little Qing was fighting fiercely with Xiaochen and the others, there was no one in the place who could stop him. To put it bluntly, there was not a single ancient life form in the place of creation. It could be said that Dongfang had entered a place where there was no one. Very smoothly, he found Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, Xiao Luan, Dongfang Lin, and the others. When she saw Dongfang Lin excitedly called out, "Mother! Now is not the time to talk. Let's leave this place first." There were too many things that he did not have time to discuss with the children. Dongfang led the few of them and quickly left the place of creation. They did not encounter any obstructions along the way. Even if he was obstructed, with Dongfang's strength, he was able to open up a bloody path as if he was smashing rotten wood. After successfully bringing Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and the others out of the place of creation, Dongfang flew towards the place that he had discussed with Xiaochen in advance. Dongfang's operation was very smooth. On the other side, little Qing, who was fighting fiercely with Xiaochen, also sensed everything that happened in the place of creation. Knowing that someone had taken away Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and the others, little Qing looked at Xiaochen and shouted angrily, "Xiaochen, you sent people to the place of creation?" "Yes, I did. Since we've already broken off, how can I let my family fall into your hands?" In response, Xiaochen did not refute, but admitted it openly. Just now, Xiaochen also received a message from Dongfang saying that it was a success, and he was greatly relieved. After obtaining the power of a primogenitor, Xiaochen and the others naturally could not be mentioned in the same breath. For Xiaochen and the others to communicate with each other through divine sense from thousands of miles away, it was too easy for them. Therefore, when Dongfang had just left the place of creation, Xiaochen already knew. Looking at Xiaochen's indifferent appearance, little Qing was burning with anger. Not only because she could not take down Xiaochen and the others, but also because Xiaochen dared to send people to infiltrate the place of creation. "Xiaochen, you're courting death." The only hostage that could threaten Xiaochen was taken away. One could imagine how terrible little Qing's mood was. Xiaochen, on the other hand, was completely unfazed by little Qing's presence. His attitude toward Little Qing had completely changed now that he had become more powerful. As the two sides fought, more and more people entered the spatial tunnel. The number was estimated to have exceeded 100 billion. They were the only living beings in the world now. At this moment, under the protection of Xiaochen and the others, they were escaping one after another. Spirit of heaven and earth, I have obtained the power of all living beings. From now on, I will be the master of all living beings. From now on, all living beings will no longer be anyone's tool or ant, not even heaven and earth. Seeing that most of the people had left, Xiaochen and Lin Yun jointly forced Little Qing back with a punch. Then, Xiaochen roared at the sky. From now on, I will be the master of all living beings in this world. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2942. She had failed to stop Xiaochen and even allowed Xiaochen to teleport hundreds of billions of cultivators from various universes away right under her nose. Little Qing's expression was extremely ugly. She had failed to stop Xiaochen and even allowed Xiaochen to teleport hundreds of billions of cultivators from various universes away right under her nose. Little Qing's expression was extremely ugly. Especially when she heard Xiaochen's angry roar at this moment, one could imagine how Little Qing felt. Originally, Little Qing had planned to use these people to deal with the origin world. But now, they had all been rescued by Xiaochen, which had completely disrupted Little Qing's plan. Xiaochen glanced coldly at Little Qing and said in a deep voice, "None of these people live in the world. All living beings in this world are not anyone's tools, nor are they anyone's sacrifices." After saying that, Xiaochen, Lin Yun, and Mo He prepared to leave. Seeing this, Little Qing did not stop them. Instead, she watched them enter the spatial passage. In the end, the spatial passage slowly closed. An ancient creature said unwillingly, "Are we going to let them go just like that?" Little Qing glanced coldly at the ancient creature. Naturally, she was unwilling to let Xiaochen and the others leave, but what could she do? Chase after them? But even if she chased after them, would she be able to stop Xiaochen and the others? With the power of all living beings, Xiaochen and the others were no longer the same as before. The development of the situation had seriously exceeded Little Qing's expectations. This battle had thoroughly humiliated Little Qing. Not only had she failed to take down Xiaochen and the others, but she had even allowed Xiaochen and the others to rescue them right under her nose. This was absolutely a great humiliation. Little Qing did not say anything. With a gloomy face, she turned around and left. Since things had developed to this point, it was useless to say anything else. It was a temporary end. On the other side, Xiaochen and the others who had left soon met up with the cultivators from various universes. At the same time, Dongfang Yun, Xiao Yao, and Xiao Lao were also there. "Father." Seeing Xiaochen, the two little guys immediately came up to him. Seeing this, Xiaochen smiled and patted their heads. Seeing that they were safe and sound, Xiaochen heaved a sigh of relief. In the endless starry sky, there was a dark mass of people. These people were the lucky survivors of the world. Their emotions and desires had not been erased, so they were still considered normal living beings. In the future, these people would be the ones that Xiaochen would need to protect. Right now, the most important thing was to find a place to stay. Xiaochen looked at Lin Yun, Mo He, and He Zhu. "It's time to create a home that truly belongs to us." Because of the primal origin world and the land of creation, the universes in this world were in ruins. The previous order had been completely disrupted, and the various universes could be said to be riddled with holes. Therefore, Xiaochen wanted to rush to create a world where everyone could live in peace. In response, Lin Yun and the others nodded in agreement. It was not the best choice for these people to go to any universe. It would be best to create a new world for them. Soon, Xiaochen and the others sat together and gathered in the starry sky. Every one of them had an aura that soared into the sky. Since they already had the strength of an ancestor, creating a world was not impossible for them. Moreover, to be precise, Xiao Chen and the others did not really want to create a world. They just wanted to merge a few universes that they had their eyes on to form a new, huge universe. The Great Thousand World, the Primordial World, the Great World, the Great Demon World, the Red Wind World, and other universes were all chosen by Xiao Chen and the others. By completely merging these universes, a new universe would be formed. The area would be extremely large, enough to support the lives of hundreds of billions of people. Rich power of loss surrounded Xiao Chen and the others. Under the influence of the power of loss, the Great Thousand World and the other universes that had been chosen quickly underwent tremendous changes. As if attracted by some force, the space began to distort. The ground, the sky, the mountains, and everything else collapsed inch by inch. It was as if they had been directly shattered. However, these universes began to merge together again and formed a new world. Such a big movement naturally did not escape the attention of the ancestor and Little Qing. Little Qing's face was gloomy, but she did not stop them. In Qiu Zu's residence in the origin world, Hu Wang looked at Qiu Zu with a puzzled expression and asked, "What are they doing?" He could feel that these universes seemed to have been destroyed by Xiao Chen and the others in an instant. However, very soon, they seemed to have been reborn and had broken out of their cocoons. Hu Wang did not understand what Xiao Chen and the others were doing. However, Qiu Zu said faintly, "They want to create a new world, just like the origin world and the land of creation." Qiu Zu was not shocked by Xiao Chen and the others' methods. After all, the other ancestor could also use such methods. What really made Qiu Zu feel complicated was that neither the origin world nor the land of creation could stop Xiao Chen and the others. This also meant that from now on, this world would form a true tripartite balance of power. They had thought that this would be a battle between the origin world and the land of creation. However, who would have thought that the legendary power of all living beings would appear at this critical juncture? This was something that no one had expected. Everything can no longer be stopped. Now, even the ancestor and the spirit of heaven and earth did not know how things would develop in the end. Everything had gone beyond their control. No one knew where the world would go in the end. They did not know what the ancestor and Little Qing were thinking. Under the mighty power of Xiao Chen and the others, a new world was slowly forming. This was a brand new world formed by merging several universes. It was huge, countless times bigger than any of the universes. The mountains, rivers, and everything was as beautiful as a painting. This was the world that Xiao Chen and the others had created for the sake of all living beings. Since the world could not give all living beings a place to live, Xiao Chen and the others would create one for themselves. As this new world slowly took shape, a dense heavenly might came crashing down from the sky in all directions. This was the world expressing its dissatisfaction. Because Xiao Chen and the others had created a new world, it was tantamount to directly challenging the dignity of the world. However, in the face of such pressure, Xiao Chen, Lin Yun, Mu Ling Xian, and the others did not change their expressions. Lin Yun even snorted coldly. "Even if you are not happy, what can you do?" Now, Xiao Chen and the others were not afraid of the pressure of the world. So what if it was the world? At this moment, Xiao Chen and the others only represented the living beings of the world. As for the world, Xiao Chen and the others did not care about it anymore. Even if they were not happy, what could they do? Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2943. The pressure of the world covered the heavens and the earth as if it wanted to crush Xiao Chen and the others to death. However, it didn't take long for the pressure to vanish with a low shout from the others. The pressure of the world covered the heavens and the earth as if it wanted to crush Xiao Chen and the others to death. However, it didn't take long for the pressure to vanish with a low shout from the others. Disperse. A single word was spoken softly, and the pressure in the sky was instantly dispersed. The world couldn't stop Xiao Chen and the others from doing anything. After all, the energy of all living beings was in existence on the same level as the spirit of the world. After obtaining the energy of all living beings, Xiao Chen and the others weren't afraid of the pressure of the world anymore. It could even be said that they'd escaped the control of the world a long time ago. As time passed, the new world slowly took form. In the end, a brand new world appeared before them. Xiaochen and the others stood up and spoke to the living beings present here. This is our new home. From today onwards, even the world can't bully us as it pleases. As soon as he spoke, the living beings instantly erupted with cheers. Since the origin world and the origin world had appeared successively, the living beings had become the tools of the world. All living beings in the world seemed to have become tools in their hands. They could only be used and could only choose to submit. They had no right to resist at all. But now, along with the growth of Xiaochen and the others, the living beings of the world finally had their own protectors. Even people as strong as the primogenitors and Little Qing couldn't bully the living beings of the world as they pleased. Brother Xiaochen, give this new world a name. After all, this is where we'll live in the future. Let's call it the world of living. The world of living was the name of the new world. Since it was established for the living beings of the world, then it was naturally the most suitable name. Lin Yun smiled and nodded when she heard that. That's right. After that, Xiaochen and the others set up a shocking restriction above the world of living, and it enveloped the entire place. With this restriction in place, even the primogenitors and Little Qing couldn't sneak into the world of living, and the ancient living beings couldn't even break through the restriction. Xiaochen and the others would be able to sense the slightest movement in the air. After doing all this, the living beings began to enter the land of all living beings. This was their new home. In a new home that was free from the control of the world, it could be said that the world did not have any control over it. To put it bluntly, it meant that they wouldn't have to worry about heavenly punishment in the future when they cultivated. This was because heavenly punishment and heavenly might could not descend upon the land of all living beings. Xiaochen and the others would not allow it. With so many people entering the land of all living beings, there were naturally many things that needed to be dealt with. However, Xiaochen and the others didn't need to personally deal with these matters. Naturally, the world lords of the various universes, as well as the strong ones, would be in charge. As for Xiaochen and the others, as the guardian gods of all living beings, they only needed to oversee the land of all living beings. At the center of the land of all living beings, Xiaochen and the others rewarded the palace of all living beings. Among them, Xiaochen, Lin Yun, Muling Xian, Mo He, Ancestor He, and Dong Fangyan had become the gods of all living beings and were respectfully addressed as divine ancestors. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. After the land of all living beings was established, the world seemed to have returned to peace in an instant. The origin world and the land of creation were unusually quiet, which was rare for them. The battles instantly stopped, and all sides maintained a relative calm. The origin world, the land of creation, and the land of all living beings stood in a tripartite balance. They seemed to balance each other, so no one dared to act rashly. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. The land of all living beings was gradually on the right track. The vast and boundless land of all living beings had been divided into 12 prefectures, and each prefecture had hundreds of prefectures. Each prefecture was ruled by a world lord. In half a year, many people had broken through to the world lord level. With the current strength of Xiaochen and the others, it wasn't difficult for them to help some people break through to the world lord level. New rules and order were constantly being established. In the land of all living beings, everyone's center was the palace of all living beings. Everything revolved around the palace of all living beings. Xiaochen and the other divine ancestors were currently residing in the palace of all living beings. Every family and force had a statue of Xiaochen and the others. In the hearts of all living beings, Xiaochen and the others were like gods. They had become the spiritual sustenance of countless people. The palace of all living beings was now like the origin world. In the hearts of all living beings, it was a place of yearning and longing. It was a place where the gods resided. In the palace of all living beings, Xiaochen, Lin Yun, and the others were busy dealing with the various matters of the land of all living beings. Of course, Xiaochen and Lin Yan directly handed some trivial matters to Xin Yuanling, Li Tian, and the others to deal with. What they really paid attention to was the rules of the land of all living beings, the establishment of rules, and the establishment of a new world. These things were indispensable. In half a year, they slowly perfected these things one by one. The land of all living beings now resembled a true world. Brother Xiaochen, we've basically finished dealing with everything. The rules of the land of all living beings are nearing completion. The land of all living beings is now in existence comparable to the origin world and the land of creation. In a small world, Lin Yan looked at Xiaochen and said with a faint smile on her face. In response, Xiaochen smiled faintly and said, "Yes, I can finally relax." "Ha, I see that Brother Xiaochen has lived quite comfortably in the past half a year," He laughed heartily in response. In the land of all living beings, there was no conflict between the righteous and demonic Dao. Demonic Dao cultivators, evil Dao cultivators, and righteous Dao cultivators all coexisted in this place. Although there would still be conflicts below, and there would still be competition between different forces or hostility. However, these things were nothing to Xiaochen and the others. As the guardians of all living beings, Xiaochen and the others wouldn't pay attention to these disappearances. Moreover, as long as there were people, there would definitely be competition. The competition between the various forces wasn't enough to attract the attention of Xiaochen and the others at all. What Xiaochen and the others truly cared about was the origin world and the land of creation. As for other small matters, they would naturally be handled by their subordinates. Xiaochen and the others were only responsible for setting the rules. As long as it was within the rules, there wouldn't be any problems. The land of all living beings was becoming more and more like a true world. Thus, Xiaochen said with a smile when he heard Emoi's words. "Aren't all of you the same? It wasn't easy to have such a peaceful life. I see that all of you are so happy that you can't close your mouths. However, we still need to pay attention to the origin world and the land of creation. Although everything is becoming peaceful now, someone will destroy everything sooner or later. We can't lower our guard. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 2944. The creation of the land of all living beings had gone very smoothly, and neither the origin world nor the land of creation had tried to stop it. The creation of the land of all living beings had gone very smoothly, and neither the origin world nor the land of creation had tried to stop it. However, just because of this, Xiaochen still didn't dare to be careless. After all, just because they hadn't tried to stop it didn't mean that they didn't have any other thoughts. Whether it was the origin world or the land of creation, Xiaochen was certain that they definitely wouldn't allow the land of all living beings to continue existing. Even though they had temporarily obtained half a year of peace, it still didn't prove anything. Hearing Xiaochen's words, everyone nodded in agreement. Now was indeed not the time to relax. However, compared to before, Xiaochen and the others were in a much better situation now. To be honest, when they faced the land of creation of the origin world and the land of creation. At the very least, they weren't as powerless as before when facing the two colossi. Time still passed like this, day after day. Life in the land of all living beings was still very peaceful. Ordinary people naturally didn't care about the matters of the outside world because they simply couldn't come into contact with that level. Although only half a year had passed since the creation of the land of all living beings, everyone was no longer on tenterhooks under the protection of Xiaochen and the others. As for the threat of the origin world and the land of creation, it was left to Xiaochen and the others to deal with. After returning to his residence, Xiaochen immediately saw Qin Shuru and the others, as well as Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao. With the transformation of his strength, Xiaochen finally had the strength to provide a stable environment for his family. They didn't have to live under someone else's roof like before. They had their own home, so Qin Shuru and the others were naturally very happy. "You're back," 100 Flower Fairy said with a gentle smile when she saw Xiaochen. Hearing this, Xiaochen gently embraced her. "How is it? Is everything all right?" Of course, everything is fine at home. He didn't need to worry about the matters at home. Chinshuru and the others could be said to have taken care of everything in an orderly manner. Xiaochen didn't need to worry about anything at all. At this moment, Xiao Yao was in closed-door cultivation as well, and she was preparing to break through to the ancestor realm. As Xiao Chen's eldest son, there was no need to mention Xiao Yao's cultivation talent. Coupled with the fact that he did not lack cultivation resources at all, he had broken through to the ancestor realm at a young age. After going through a series of events, whether it was Xiao Yao or Xiao Lao, both of them had matured a lot. They were already capable of taking charge. Without disturbing Xiao Yao, Xiaochen had dinner with Chinshuru and the other girls. Although Xiaochen didn't need to eat for a long time at his cultivation level, Xiaochen liked the feeling of being able to eat together as a family. Therefore, whether it was necessary or not, as long as they had time, Xiaochen and Chinshuru would prepare 3 meals a day like ordinary people. Then, the family would gather together to eat and chat, just like ordinary people. Just as everything in the land of living beings was stabilizing, Xiaochen brought the remaining billions of living beings to the land of living beings because Little Qing didn't have any living beings. This also meant that Little Qing didn't have the means to resurrect from death like she did in the origin world. After all, she didn't have any living beings under her command. Even if she had the means, Little Qing couldn't cook without rice. However, Little Qing clearly didn't want to give up just like that. Therefore, in the past 6 months, Little Qing had exhausted almost all the resources in the land of living beings and mastered an absolutely powerful method. She used the soil of the land of living beings to create living beings. Although they were called living beings, the things created by the soil didn't have souls at all. To put it bluntly, they didn't have intelligence. However, their combat strength was very strong, and they only obeyed Little Qing. There was no need to worry about betrayal at all. This was Little Qing's method as a spirit of the world. She had obtained ordinary living beings from the origin world and the land of living beings. As for Little Qing, because she was a step late, she didn't have many subordinates she could use, especially the low-level warriors. Little Qing had no choice but to find another way. She used her powerful method as a spirit of the world to create an army of soil. This army of soil had no soul, no intelligence, and no ability to cultivate. They only knew how to fight. This was what Little Qing needed. Seeing the army gradually take shape, the coldness in Little Qing's eyes grew stronger. After half a year of silence, it was finally time to take action. Only the beast slave and Sure Song had complicated feelings because they knew that once Little Qing took action, her first target would obviously be the land of living beings. Destroying the land of living beings first and then dealing with the origin world had always been Little Qing's plan. However, the beast slave and Sure Song couldn't accept becoming enemies with Xiaochen. After obtaining the power of living beings, Xiaochen had become an existence comparable to the primogenitors and Little Qing. However, from now on, he stood on the opposite side of the land of living beings. Seeing that the flames of war were about to erupt, the beast slave and Sure Song were extremely conflicted. In the past half a year, the beast slave and Sure Song had spent less and less time in contact with Little Qing. Most of the time, when they encountered problems, they would try their best to avoid them. They also rarely expressed their opinions. It was obvious that some cracks had appeared between the two of them and Little Qing. However, they weren't Xiaochen and the others. They wouldn't break off their relationship with Little Qing just because of a small crack. As true ancient living beings, the beast slave and Sure Song's loyalty to Little Qing was unquestionable. However, because of many things that had happened, the two of them did have some opinions about Little Qing's actions. The spirit of the world should be ready. I guess it's about to take action. Sure Song said helplessly when they gathered together. Little Qing's preparations were complete. It wouldn't be long before she took action against the land of living beings. Hearing this, the beast slave said with a displeased face. Why must we target the land of living beings? Isn't our enemy the origin world? Won't everything be over if we join forces with the land of living beings and defeat the origin world? In the beast slave's opinion, joining forces with Xiao Chen and the others to deal with the origin world was the most important thing. Because the relationship between Little Qing and the primogenitors couldn't be reconciled. However, it was different from Xiao Chen and the others. First of all, Xiao Chen and the others' strength didn't come from the world. That was the fundamental difference. Moreover, to be honest, there were ways to resolve the cracks in their relationship. As long as Little Qing was willing, Xiao Chen and the others probably wouldn't refuse her. If they joined forces with the land of living beings and defeated the origin world, the world would soon return to peace. At that time, Little Qing would become a true spirit of the world. Xiao Chen and the others wouldn't be able to threaten her position. However, Little Qing didn't have any intention of joining forces with the land of living beings. Not only that, but she was bent on destroying the land of living beings. Destroying the land of living beings before dealing with the origin world was Little Qing's current plan. This made the beast slave rather displeased. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 2945. Their true enemy was the origin world, but Little Qing wanted to deal with the land of all life first. Their true enemy was the origin world, but Little Qing wanted to deal with the land of all life first. Because of the betrayal of Xiao Chen and the others, Little Qing had been suppressing a ball of fire in her heart. However, Xiao Chen and the others didn't count as betrayal. It could only be said that different people couldn't work together. Xiao Chen and the others couldn't accept Little Qing's actions. Fundamentally speaking, there was no enmity between them. Moreover, the beast slave knew exactly what Xiao Chen and the others wanted. As long as Little Qing didn't attack the land of all life, Xiao Chen and the others would definitely agree to form an alliance with Little Qing. The land of all life was Xiao Chen's bottom line. As long as Little Qing could promise this, then everything could be negotiated. Unlike the origin world, there was no possibility of negotiation at all. There was an irreconcilable conflict between the two sides. Since they came from the same bloodline, either Little Qing would devour the primogenitors or the primogenitors would devour Little Qing. Therefore, it was impossible for the land of creation and the origin world to exist in peace. The matter would only end when one side was destroyed. Everything was clear, but Little Qing wanted to deal with the land of all life first. It was really inconceivable. Song sighed helplessly when he heard the beast slave's complaint. Alright, this matter isn't up to us to decide. But I heard that Xiao Chen and the others are developing well. I wonder what they're like. I want to go take a look. The beast slave and Song often paid attention to the land of all life, so they were happy for Xiao Chen when they knew that the land of all life was developing well. The beast slave rolled his eyes and smiled when he heard Song's words. Why don't we go seek refuge with Xiao Chen? Song's face darkened when he heard this. He already had the thought of seeking refuge with Xiao Chen. What nonsense are you talking about? We'll be in trouble if others hear this. The beast slave and Song had always been on Xiao Chen's side. They'd persuaded Little Qing more than once not to attack the land of all life. Thus, Little Qing's attitude towards the two of them gradually became distant. She even began to suspect whether the two of them were going to betray her. It could be said that in Little Qing's heart, the beast slave and Song's positions had long become incomparably awkward. At this time, if other people heard the beast slave's words, Little Qing would definitely be furious. At that time, even if the two of them were ancient living beings, they would not have a good ending. After the incident with Xiao Chen, Xiao Qing had become a little crazy. Perhaps it was because as a spirit of heaven and earth, he had never been humiliated like this before. He had been stopped by Xiao Chen and the others, whom he regarded as ants. Furthermore, they had forcibly taken away hundreds of billions of lives right under his nose. In addition, Xiao Qing's relationship with Xiao Chen and Xiao Chen's actions made Xiao Qing feel a deep sense of betrayal. As the saying goes, the more you value something, the harder it will be to accept it. Xiao Chen and Xiao Qing were like this. Because Little Qing valued Xiao Chen from the beginning to the end, in the face of Xiao Chen's betrayal, Little Qing could not accept it in her heart, and her hatred continued to rise. At this juncture, it was obviously not a wise move for the beast slave to say such words. Hearing Song's words, the beast slave pursed his lips, but he consciously did not continue speaking. Although he really wanted to seek refuge with Xiaochen, the beast slave also knew that it was impossible. She and Song would not betray the land of creation. At least, they would not betray it before something happened. Letting out a deep sigh, Song was also very uncomfortable in the land of creation, but what could he do? The two of them did not know that their every move had been under little Qing's surveillance. She had long been suspicious of the two of them, so a few months ago, little Qing had already arranged for people to secretly monitor the beast slave and Song's every move. Therefore, the beast slave's previous words were transmitted to little Qing's ears without missing a single word. In her original residence, little Qing sat on a chair with a gloomy expression, and a cold glint flashed in her eyes as she spoke coldly. Seek refuge with the land of all living beings? Beast slave, I didn't expect that even you would betray me. After experiencing Xiaochen's incident, little Qing could be said to be extremely sensitive to the word betrayal. At this moment, if anyone had the slightest hint of betrayal, they would definitely be met with little Qing's violent rage, and there was no room for negotiation at all. The beast slave had personally said that he wanted to seek refuge with the land of all living beings, which directly touched little Qing's bottom line. As soon as she finished speaking, little Qing directly called the old tree, Mu Ling, and several other ancient living beings, and shouted in a deep voice, "Capture the beast slave for me." She suddenly wanted to attack the beast slave. Hearing this, the old tree, Mu Ling, and the others were stunned. What was going on? Wasn't everything fine all along? Why did the spirit of heaven and earth suddenly attack the beast slave? Seeing that the few of them were stunned on the spot, little Qing's expression became even more gloomy. What, didn't you hear what I said? Mu Ling, who had a good relationship with Song, stepped forward and said, "Spirit of heaven and earth, why did you suddenly attack the beast slave? She's an ancient living being, and she didn't do anything wrong, right?" What, are you questioning me? She wants to defect, can I capture her? Little Qing was very dissatisfied with Mu Ling's question. In the past 6 months, little Qing's desire to control had become more and more vigorous, and she didn't allow the slightest rebuttal from her subordinates at all. As long as little Qing said something, then her subordinates must unconditionally carry it out. Seeing that little Qing's expression was becoming more and more unfriendly, the old tree quietly pulled back Mu Ling, who was about to speak. "We obey." Stopping Mu Ling from continuing to speak, the old tree respectfully responded, and then the few of them strode away. On the way to the beast slave's residence, Mu Ling said with some displeasure, "Why did you pull me back just now? Are you looking for death? If you said another word just now, I reckon you'll end up like the beast slave. Then what do we do now?" "Just do as you're told." Mu Ling wasn't willing to attack the beast slave, but little Qing had already given the order. Even if she was unwilling, there was no other way. So after hearing Mu Ling's words, Mu Ling could only helplessly shake her head. The 4 ancient living beings went straight to the beast slave's residence. At this moment, the beast slave was still unaware of this. What the beast slave said just now was just a thoughtless remark. In fact, from the bottom of his heart, the beast slave had never thought of betraying the land of creation and betraying little Qing. But who would have thought that because of his unintentional words, Xiaoqing would actually have the intention to kill him? She didn't even hesitate to send 4 ancient living beings to capture him, and didn't even give him a chance to defend himself. Because of an unintentional remark, the beast slave brought about a fatal disaster for himself. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 2946. Facing the sudden arrival of Wood Spirit and the others, the beast slave didn't realize that something was wrong at first. Facing the sudden arrival of Wood Spirit and the others, the beast slave didn't realize that something was wrong at first. Instead, he smiled and said, "You guys really don't have time to visit me today." It was rare for 4 ancient creatures to visit at the same time. Moreover, among the 4 of them, the the beast slave was only slightly familiar with Wood Spirit. As for the other three, the beast slave didn't have a deep friendship with them. Hearing the beast slave's words, Wood Spirit had a complicated expression while Old Tree spoke directly. Under the orders of Heaven and Earth Spirit, we are here to capture the beast slave. Capture me? Hearing this, the beast slave's expression changed immediately. I didn't do anything, and Heaven and Earth Spirit ordered people to capture me? The beast slave was confused. However, when he looked at Old Tree and the other three, his expression quickly turned cold as he asked in a deep voice. Why? He couldn't think of any reason for Heaven and Earth Spirit to capture him. After all, the beast slave hadn't done anything in the past 6 months. Into this, Old Tree's answer was, if you have anything to say, just say it to Heaven and Earth Spirit. Compared to its spirit, Old Tree was obviously more loyal to Heaven and Earth Spirit. Hence, Old Tree didn't have the slightest intention of disobeying Heaven and Earth Spirit's orders. Saying that, Old Tree and the others were ready to attack. In this regard, the beast slave was naturally unwilling to be captured without a fight. Attack. Try it if you can. Both sides attacked. Facing 4 ancient creatures at the same time, the beast slave wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he was filled with rage. To be honest, the beast slave was confused. What exactly did he do wrong for them to want to capture him for no reason? The beast slave couldn't figure it out. There wasn't even a single crime, and they only said that they were under the orders of Heaven and Earth Spirit. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. Until now, the beast slave still didn't realize that the reason why Little Green attacked him was because of his unintentional words. Just like this, the 5 of them instantly broke out into a huge battle, and the aftermath of the battle naturally spread out quickly. Beast slave, surrender. Don't be stubborn. Wood Spirit had no choice but to attack. However, Wood Spirit still hoped that the beast slave could surrender. Resisting Little Green in the land of creation wasn't a good choice. From the bottom of his heart, Wood Spirit didn't want to be enemies with the beast slave. Surrender? What did I do wrong for you to treat me like this? Beast slave, you should be clear about what you've said. Hearing this, the beast slave immediately understood. It turned out that it was because he had previously said that he would not seek refuge with Xiao Chen and the others. Because of such a sentence, Little Qing actually directly attacked him. Regarding this, the beast slave immediately laughed out loud. Ah, so that's how it is. Just because of one sentence, you want to punish me? What a joke. Putting aside whether or not the beast slave had any thoughts of betraying the land of creation, just because of one sentence, he wanted to punish himself. From this, it could be seen how petty Little Qing's tolerance was now. How could such a narrow-minded person be worthy of the title of Spirit of Heaven and Earth? Originally, the beast slave thought that it was because of something else, but he didn't expect that it would be because of this matter. Ridiculous, extremely ridiculous. After understanding everything, the beast slave became even angrier. If it was because of other matters, then perhaps the beast slave would still be able to figure it out. However, it was because of such a non-existent matter. Just because of a little suspicion in his heart, the beast slave was going to be convicted. No matter what, the beast slave refused to accept it. Immediately, the beast slave's attacks became even more frenzied, as if he was going to fight with his life. Want to catch me? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. Beast slave, repent before you're saved. Seeing this, Old Tree and the other 3 no longer held back, and Wood Spirit even opened her mouth to persuade. However, the beast slave at this moment was no longer listening to what Wood Spirit was saying. The battle between the few of them quickly attracted the attention of the others, and Sher Song was the first to rush over. Seeing Old Tree and the other 3 besieging the beast slave, Sher Song immediately stopped them and asked in confusion. What are you doing? Sher Song, this has nothing to do with you. This is the order of the Spirit of Heaven and Earth. The Spirit of Heaven and Earth wanted to capture the beast slave. Hearing this, Sher Song was stunned. He didn't know why the Spirit of Heaven and Earth wanted to capture the beast slave, and the beast slave didn't want to implicate Sher Song. "Sher Song, this is a matter between me and them." Both Sher Song and the beast slave were very clear. Although the two of them were rather critical of Little Qing's actions recently, to be honest, the two of them had never thought of betraying the land of creation. However, Little Qing's actions, especially this time when she ordered Old Tree and the other three to capture him, really made the beast slave bitterly disappointed. He clearly didn't have any disloyalty, but he was still suspected and even wanted to capture him because of an unintentional sentence. The battle lasted for a few days, and the beast slave was really angry. However, it was 1 against 4, and the end result was obvious. The beast slave was captured. After Sher Song knew the whole story, his face turned ashen, and he personally went to find Little Qing. However, he only stayed for less than 15 minutes before he was chased out by Little Qing. As for the beast slave, he was directly sentenced to death. Because of a single sentence, Little Qing wanted to kill an ancient creature. After his persuasion failed, he returned to his residence. Sher Song's face was ashen. He never thought that Little Qing would become like this. Sher Song knew best whether the beast slave was disloyal or not, but Little Qing didn't listen to his explanation at all. Damn it! Sher Song cursed inwardly. He was extremely disappointed in Little Qing. Now that the beast slave was in prison, Sher Song couldn't do anything. He would be killed in a few days. After pondering alone for a night, Sher Song finally left the land of creation quietly. No one knew where he went. A day later, Sher Song appeared at the entrance of the land of all living beings. As soon as he appeared, Xian Yuanling's figure appeared at the same time. Xiao Chen and the others naturally wouldn't let down their guard against the land of all living beings. Therefore, as soon as Sher Song appeared, Xiao Chen and the others felt it. "Sher Song?" Seeing Sher Song, Xian Yuanling said with some confusion. "Brother Xian Yuan. Why are you not in the land of creation? What are you doing here?" "Sigh, it's a long story, but I want to see Xiao Chen." "Can I?" "Don't worry, I came alone." Sher Song wanted to see Xiao Chen. Regarding this, Xian Yuanling was silent for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Although Sher Song was an ancient creature, he was no longer a threat to the current Xiao Chen. There was no problem for him to come alone and see Xiao Chen. Moreover, even if they had completely broken off with the land of creation, Xiao Chen and the others had always treated the beast slave and Sher Song as their friends. Please add, please vote, please recommend. The error-free chapters of Sword Master Vast Expanse will continue to be updated in the bar. There are no advertisements on the website. Please add and recommend the bar. If you like Sword Master Vast Expanse, please add. Sword Master Vast Expanse bar updates the fastest. Chapter 2947. Please. Xian Yuanling made a gesture and personally invited Sher Song in. The two of them entered the land of living beings together. Sher Song really found it hard to imagine that the world before him was actually a world that had only been created half a year ago. The spirit energy was dense, and the laws were complete. Although it couldn't compare to the land of creation or the origin world, it absolutely surpassed any other universe. Of course, the numerous universes in the world were basically useless now. Space had collapsed, and the laws had withered. In the entire world, there were only 3 places where people could still live. The land of living beings, the origin world, and the land of creation. Compared to the origin world and the land of creation, the number of living beings living in the land of living beings was definitely the highest. They were weak, and even after the land of living beings was successfully created, they didn't have the ability to leave the world. After all, the land of living beings was just too large for them. Just a single continent was something they would never be able to cover in their entire lives. Therefore, in just half a year, many people had already forgotten about the conflicts in the outside world, and only the land of living beings remained in their eyes. It could be said that Xiao Chen had really done what he said. He had indeed created a safe place for all living beings in the world to shelter them from the wind and rain. It made them forget everything in the outside world. As for the threats of the origin world and the land of creation, Xiaochen and the other divine ancestors were naturally in charge of dealing with them. They went all the way to the sacred land at the center of the land of living beings. This was where Xiaochen and the other divine ancestors resided. In the land of living beings, it had become a place where the gods resided. Moreover, Xiaochen and the others weren't willing to disturb the living beings in the land of living beings. Therefore, they had set up layers of restrictions around the sacred land. No one could approach it at all. Under Xin Yuanling's lead, Song naturally entered the sacred land without a hitch, and he met Xiaochen in a small world. He was chatting with Qin Shuru and the others. When they saw Song walk over, Qin Shuru and the others stood up and bowed. Xiaochen also smiled. "Senior Song." "I can't afford to be called senior now," replied Song with a smile. Song replied with a smile. He was indeed not worthy of being addressed as senior by Xiaochen. Right now, Xiaochen was someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the primogenitors and the spirits of the world. He was not someone an ancient life form like him could compare to. However, Xiaochen did not care about this. The way he saw it, Song was his friend. That was enough. Xiaochen asked with a smile after inviting Song to take a seat, and the two of them chatted for a while. "Why are you here all of a sudden? If the spirit of heaven and earth finds out, it won't be a good thing." Given the relationship between the two of them, if little Qing were to find out that Song had personally come to see her, she would definitely fly into a rage. In the face of Xiaochen's inquiry, Song did not hide anything and immediately told Xiaochen the whole story. Sigh. The heaven and earth spirits are completely different from before. I have no choice. The main purpose of Song's visit was to hope that Xiaochen could save the beast slave's life. In this world, Song really didn't know who to turn to. Only Xiaochen had the ability to save the beast slave from little Qing's hands. As for the primogenitors, Song didn't think about them at all. They wouldn't intervene, and even if they did, it wouldn't be for the sake of saving the beast slave. After hearing about the beast slave, Xiaochen was taken aback. He didn't expect little Qing to capture the beast slave and sentence him to death in a few days. In Xiaochen's impression, even though he and little Qing had parted ways due to their different ideologies, little Qing shouldn't be so unwise as a spirit of heaven and earth. Wasn't it a little too exaggerated to kill the beast slave just because of his unintentional words? Just as Song had said, little Qing was now completely different from before. I didn't expect her to become like this. Xiaochen knitted his brows and murmured softly. Xiaochen, if you don't intervene, the beast slave will be finished. On account of our previous friendship, please save the beast slave. Song pleaded sincerely. Looking at the situation, Xiaochen put up a stern expression. Don't worry. Even if you don't say it, I won't stand by and do nothing. I've been friends with the beast slave for so many years. How can I not help when a friend is in trouble? Without any hesitation, Xiaochen agreed immediately. The beast slave was the closest to Xiaochen among the ancient creatures. As for his friend, Xiaochen definitely wouldn't leave him in the lurch. Third brother, in order to save the beast slave, you will have to fight with the heaven and earth spirits. At this juncture, I'm afraid, Xin Yuanling reminded timely. Of course, Xin Yuanling transmitted his voice and didn't let Song hear it. In Xin Yuanling's opinion, it wasn't a good thing to have a conflict with the land of creation over a beast slave. The land of living beings just had a problem, so it wasn't a good time to do so. Moreover, this time, there were no benefits for the land of living beings. It was just to save one person. Xin Yuanling was considering the overall situation. If there were no benefits, it would naturally mean that there were no benefits. But in this regard, Xiaochen replied straightforwardly. If I have to pay attention to this for everything, I'm afraid I'm no different from those old guys in the origin world. Xiaochen had already made up his mind, and no one could change his mind. He turned to look at Song. Song, stay with me for the time being. Don't worry about the beast slave. I won't sit by and do nothing. Thank you. But the puppet I left in the land of living beings can only last for 3 days. After 3 days, the heaven and earth spirits will definitely know that I left. By then, it will be troublesome to save the beast slave. Okay, I got it. After saying that, Xiaochen left in a hurry. Since he was going to make a move and become enemies with the land of living beings, he definitely had to inform Lin Yun and the others in advance. After all, the land of living beings wasn't his problem alone. If he really made a move, Lin Yun and the others would definitely know. With a thought, he told Lin Yun and the others to come to the hall to discuss something. Soon, Lin Yun and the others came to the hall one after another. When they saw Xiaochen arrive first, Lin Yun asked with a smile. "What's wrong? Why did you call us here in such a hurry?" "Yeah, there hasn't been anything unusual in the outside world recently." They didn't know why Xiaochen had called them here. After everyone arrived, Xiaochen spoke. "The beast slave has been captured and will be executed in the next few days. I want to save her." He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. When they heard that, Lin Yun and the others' expressions quickly became serious. Xiaochen wanted to save someone. It wasn't a big problem. But the key was that he wanted to save someone from Little Qing. He had to be careful. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2948. Currently, the land of all living beings, the origin world, and the land of creation were in a three-way stalemate. No one dared to act rashly. This was also the reason why the three sides had stabilized over the past half a year. There had been no conflict, and no one had chosen to attack. Because a slight move could affect the whole situation. You had no idea how things would develop once you attacked. Moreover, unlike the previous situation, you're facing more than one enemy now. Previously, when the origin world and the land of creation were fighting, both sides only needed to think about how to defeat the other side. But now, when you were fighting one side, you had to divert your attention to guard against a third party's sneak attack. Moreover, once the casualties were too great, it was very likely that you would benefit the other side for no reason. In a three-way stalemate, there were many things to consider. Therefore, when they heard that Xiaochen wanted to rescue the beast slave, Lin Yun and the others fell into deep thought. On one hand, they were shocked because of the beast slave. After all, the beast slave was an ancient creature. How could Little Qing kill it just like that? This was completely different from the Little Qing they knew. Secondly, it was the feasibility of the rescue operation. It was not easy to rescue someone from Little Qing's hands. Moreover, it was very likely that a battle would break out. When the time came, no one could say for sure how things would develop. Xiaochen did not rush them. Instead, he waited patiently for their answer. Even if Lin Yun and the others did not agree, Xiaochen would still take action. At most, he would go alone. With his current strength, although he was not Little Qing's match in a one-on-one battle, it should not be a problem for him to rescue the beast slave. After a moment of silence, Lin Yun finally said, "Even if we don't agree, you will still do it yourself, right?" "That's right." Lin Yun smiled when he heard that. He then shook his head helplessly. "I knew it. But I have no reason to object. After all, we were acquainted with the beast slaves. We can't just stand by and watch when a friend is in trouble." Although saving the beast slave was dangerous and there were too many uncertainties, Lin Yun still chose to save the beast slave. Following Lin Yun's statement, Muling Xian, and the others nodded and smiled. No one denied Xiaochen's decision. Although everyone was now the divine ancestor of the land of all living beings, there had never been a time when everyone was so united. Perhaps because they had experienced it before, Xiaochen, Lin Yun, and the others were now very close to each other. They were extremely united. After deciding to rescue the beast slave, after discussion, they decided to sneak into the land of creation. It would be best if they could safely rescue her. However, if something unexpected were to happen, or if Little Qing were to discover them, in that case, they had no choice but to fight. When the time came, Mu Lingxian and the others would come to their aid in time and cover Xiao Chen's escape. Brother Lin Yun greeted Song when he saw Lin Yun. Senior Song. We've decided to head to the land of creation immediately. However, Senior Song, I don't think it's better for you to stay in the land of all living beings. Song's situation wasn't much better than the beast slave. Since Little Qing could kill the beast slave, she could naturally kill him as well. Therefore, Xiaochen believed that Song couldn't return to the land of creation now, so it was better for him to stay in the land of all living beings and join them. Song didn't refuse. Clearly, he'd considered this point and immediately smiled. That was my original plan. But don't you need me to go with you if you want to save the beast slave? Song had originally planned to leave the land of creation, because Little Qing's actions had indeed chilled his heart. The world spirit of the past was gone. The current Little Qing was completely different from before. Her personality had become suspicious and tyrannical. Moreover, she didn't have the slightest tolerance for others. Many times, as long as someone refuted Little Qing's decisions, it was very likely that they would be punished. Moreover, the laws of the world had completely changed. The authority of the world spirit seemed to have been seriously challenged. The reason was the existence of the origin world and the land of all living beings. The world seemed to be the ruler of everything no longer, and all living beings had erupted with the strength to resist the world. So, Song had made his decision before he came here. However, Xiaochen and Lin Yun smiled and refused Song's intention to follow them to the land of creation. Senior Song, there's no need to go. Lin Yun and I can go. It'll be disadvantageous to the operation if there are too many people. Even though Song possessed the cultivation of an ancient life form, it wouldn't be good for him to go with them when it came to the rescue. After all, it was very difficult for him to hide from Little Qing's perception with his cultivation. However, Xiaochen and Lin Yun were different. It wasn't difficult for them to hide from Little Qing's perception with their strength. So long as they didn't take the initiative to attack, Xiaochen and Lin Yun had plenty of methods to secretly sneak into the land of creation. Of course, if they encountered obstruction and a battle occurred, then it would be a different story. Song also understood the meaning of Xiaochen's words, so he didn't force them and readily agreed. However, he reminded Xiaochen and Lin Yun to be careful. Xiaochen and Lin Yun were going to sneak into the land of creation to rescue someone. Qin Shiru, Lu Bingning, and the other women were naturally worried. However, they only reminded the two of them to be careful, so they didn't stop them too much. Time was tight. They had to rescue the beast slaves before Little Qing discovered the land of creation that Song had created. Therefore, Xiaochen and Lin Yun departed from the land of all living beings on the same day. With their current strength, their speed was much faster than the spatial spirit boat. Therefore, they didn't ride the spatial spirit boat. Instead, they directly stepped into the void and disappeared. In merely 2 hours, the two of them arrived outside the land of creation. They weren't unfamiliar with the land of creation. They knew how to enter the land of creation, but they didn't enter directly from the entrance. Instead, they directly tore apart the restrictions around the land of creation and entered. The land of creation was surrounded by restrictions. Even ancient creatures couldn't break them. However, this wasn't a problem for Xiaochen and Lin Yun. After entering the land of creation smoothly, Xiaochen looked at Lin Yun and said, "The beast slaves have been imprisoned. Let's go directly to the prison." Xiaochen and Lin Yun did not want to cause any unnecessary trouble, so they went straight to the prison to rescue the beast slave and successfully evacuate. Their mission would be considered complete. As for what Little Qing discovered in the end, it wasn't a problem that they should consider now. In any case, they definitely had to save the beast slaves. Even if Little Qing was furious because of this, it didn't matter. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 2949. They went straight to the prison. Along the way, Xiaochen and Lin Yun concealed their auras. They went straight to the prison. Along the way, Xiaochen and Lin Yan concealed their auras. With their cultivation strength, even ancient creatures would not be able to detect them. Little Qing would not be able to sense them unless it deliberately searched for them. However, when the two entered the land of creation, they did not alarm anyone. Little Qing could not possibly know that the two of them were in the land of creation at this time. Along the way, they avoided many creatures in the land of creation. As they had lived in the land of creation before, Xiaochen and Lin Yan knew the land of creation very well. This also made the two of them more at ease. They knew where the danger was and could avoid it in advance. They arrived at the prison without a hitch. However, it was obvious that there were guards here, and Xiaochen and Yi Futian needed to get rid of these guards without using any spiritual power. Once they used spiritual power, even if it was only a trace, it might be detected by Little Qing. They did not have any hopes of getting lucky. As a spirit of heaven and earth, Little Qing's divine sense definitely enveloped the entire land of creation at all times. Any rustling of leaves in the wind could not escape Little Qing's senses at all. "Let's make some preparations first," she whispered to Xiaochen. Hearing this, Xiaochen nodded. Then, the two of them took action together and directly confined and separated the entire space that covered the prison. They did this to hide it from Little Qing. After directly separating the space, even if Little Qing's divine sense scanned it, it would not detect the slightest abnormality. Of course, this was only for a short period of time. To put it bluntly, it was similar to a trick. However, it was necessary to do this. If not, when Xiaochen and Lin Yan had just rescued the beast slave, it was very likely that they would be discovered by Little Qing. However, after separating the space in advance, even if Xiaochen and Lin Yan had rescued the beast slave, Little Qing would not discover it immediately. At least, they could hide it for a period of time. And this period of time was enough for Xiaochen and Lin Yan to leave with the beast slave. That was enough. As long as they could successfully leave the place of creation, this operation would be considered a success. However, even though they were prepared in advance, Xiaochen and Lin Yan still couldn't use their spiritual power. Otherwise, their auras would still leak out. However, even if they didn't use their spiritual energy, it wouldn't be a problem. With their physical strength, Xiaochen could easily take care of the guards around them. First, they started from the outermost area. Many creatures from the land of creation were responsible for guarding the prison, while Xiaochen and Lin Yan were secretly cleaning up. His figure flashed and arrived behind a member of the fire spirit race, and then he struck the back of the fire spirit race member's neck and immediately knocked the fire spirit race member out. After dealing with one, Xiaochen's figure flashed, and he instantly disappeared from where he stood. He continued on to the next target. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the guards outside were completely wiped out by the two of them. Now, only the guards in the prison were left. However, once they entered the prison, the space became narrow, and it wouldn't be so easy to launch a sneak attack again. Therefore, Xiaochen and Lin Yan directly planned to attack and take care of the guards in the prison as soon as possible. They dared to take care of them in one fell swoop before they could spread the news. They looked at each other and nodded slightly. The two of them moved at the same time. They turned into two black shadows and rushed into the prison in an instant. At this time, at the entrance of the prison, four guards were gathered together and chatting idly. However, without any warning, Xiaochen and Lin Yan appeared instantly. The four of them were all shocked, but before they had time to react, Xiaochen and Lin Yan directly attacked and immediately knocked the four of them to the ground. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. After taking care of the guards at the entrance, Xiaochen and Lin Yan didn't stop and continued to rush into the depths of the prison. Wherever they passed, the guards didn't have any chance to react at all and were directly killed. A faint smell of blood gradually spread in the prison, and the beast slave, who was in the deepest part of the prison, had her head lowered. Her hair was disheveled, but she slowly raised her head. Her eyes were lifeless, but there was a hint of doubt in them. She smelled a faint smell of blood. This was the prison of the land of creation. Why was there a smell of blood? Could it be that someone was attacking the prison? She shook her head in self-mockery and felt that she was thinking too much. What was this place? It was the land of creation. Who would dare to attack the prison? When she thought that she had actually become a prisoner, because of a sentence, the beast slave's heart was like dead ashes. She had never thought that she would fall into such a plight one day. As an ancient creature, she was actually killed by little Qing just like that. Moreover, the reason was so groundless, and she didn't even have the slightest chance to defend herself. In fact, ever since she had been captured, the beast slave hadn't even seen little Qing once. It was almost as if little Qing didn't even want to listen to her explanation. Her heart was like dead ashes. Perhaps it wasn't so bad to die like this. Just as the beast slave was thinking this, two figures suddenly appeared outside her cell. She looked up and saw Xiao Chen and Lin Yan standing in front of her with smiles on their faces. You? What? Is it that strange to see us? Why are you here? To get you out of here, of course. As she replied with a smile, she undid the seal around the beast slave and restored her cultivation base. The beast slave looked at Xiao Chen in shock. She had never imagined that Xiao Chen would appear here. Her mind was blank, and she asked almost instinctively. How did you know? The beast slave was very confused. How did Xiao Chen and Lin Yan know about her? Shi Song came looking for us. He's already in the land of living beings. Alright, there's no need to think about it. You probably won't be able to stay in the land of creation any longer. Come back with us. I'm sure the land of living beings will be much more comfortable than the land of creation. Okay. The beast slave looked deeply at Xiao Chen, then nodded without much hesitation. She didn't want to stay in the land of creation to begin with. After this incident, the beast slave's heart toward little Qing was like dead ashes. Her loyalty to little Qing had long since been shattered. Therefore, in the face of Xiao Chen's invitation, the beast slave agreed without much thought. She smiled and nodded, then the three of them left the cell. By now, Xiao Chen and Lin Yan had taken care of all the guards in the cell. They rushed out without incident and disappeared into the void. The simplest step had been successful. Next was to leave the land of creation. As long as they left the land of creation, even Xiao Chen wouldn't be able to do anything to them. After all, if little Qing wanted to stop Xiao Chen and Lin Yan, it wouldn't be that easy. Moreover, it seemed that little Qing hadn't noticed anything amiss. Otherwise, she would have made a move long ago. So far, everything had been going smoothly, just as he had expected. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 2950. The three of them escaped from the place of creation. With Xiao Chen and Lin Yan escorting them, everything went smoothly. The three of them escaped from the place of creation. With Xiao Chen and Lin Yan escorting them, everything went smoothly. Many experts in the place of creation sensed something. Xiao Chen and the other two only heaved a sigh of relief when they successfully left the place of creation. Alright, we shouldn't stay here any longer. Let's leave as soon as possible. However, Lin Yan still spoke cautiously. Although they had successfully left the place of creation, the spatial restriction of the two wouldn't last long. Once the spatial restriction of the prison was broken, little Qing would definitely be able to detect the problem immediately. By then, it would be difficult to attack. In this regard, Xiao Chen didn't have any objections. Because the beast slave was injured, the two of them left with the beast slave directly. Their figures flashed and instantly disappeared from the spot. At the same time, after Xiao Chen and the other two left, a full 15 minutes had passed before the spatial restriction of the prison slowly dissipated. And it was at this time that little Qing finally felt that something was wrong. With a thought, she instantly appeared outside the prison. Looking at the people around the prison, little Qing's expression was extremely cold. Xiao Chen and Lin Yan's auras were still floating in the air. Little Qing was naturally no exception to these two auras. Damn it! She cursed angrily. It was Xiao Chen and Lin Yan again. Moreover, the two of them had rescued the beast slave. Without even entering the prison, Little Qing knew that the beast slave had been rescued by the two of them. This made Little Qing very angry. This was the place of creation, her base camp. However, the other party had entered without anyone noticing, and no one had noticed anything wrong. What was this? Was this a blatant provocation? A terrifying aura instantly swept across the sky. Then, the old tree, the wood spirit, the stone spirit clan leader, and other experts from the place of creation rushed over. Seeing the ashen Little Qing and the countless corpses lying around the prison, everyone was stunned. The old tree even had an ominous premonition. Good, very good. They have already fought their way into your home, but you actually didn't notice at all. Little Qing was practically gnashing her teeth as she spoke. The old tree and the others could only lower their heads submissively and remain silent. It was obvious that Little Qing was on the verge of exploding at this moment. She swept her gaze over everyone and shouted coldly. What are you still standing there for? Quickly go and see if that fellow, Sure Song, is still in the origin world. Since Xiaochen and Lin Yun had personally rescued the beast slave, where did the two of them get the news? The first person that came to Little Qing's mind was Sure Song. Other than Sure Song, who else would do such a thing? With that, the old tree and the patriarch of the Stone Spirit clan immediately made their way to Sure Song's residence. However, their faces completely darkened when they arrived there to take a look. Sure Song's aura came from this puppet. Their faces darkened. When they thought about Little Qing's rage, the old tree and the Stone Spirit clan's patriarch shook their heads and smiled bitterly. However, they did not dare to delay any longer. They grabbed the puppet that Sure Song had left behind and returned to Little Qing's residence. Seeing the two of them return with a puppet, Little Qing, who was seated on the main seat, understood everything before the two of them could say anything. Her face, which was already burning with rage, became even more gloomy as she said coldly. A living person disappeared just like that. Moreover, it has been so many days. Didn't any of you notice at all? Her words were obviously filled with blame. Everyone did not know how to answer her and could only choose to remain silent. Little Qing paused for a moment when she saw everyone lowering their heads in silence. Then, she waved her hand and said unhappily, "All of you, get lost." After ordering everyone to leave, Little Qing's expression became even more unsightly. At the same time, her hatred for Xiaochen and the others grew even more intense. Xiaochen and the others had been stopping her from the beginning. This time, they even dared to enter the land of creation to save someone. They did not take her seriously at all. She was already planning to attack the land of living beings. Since Xiaochen and the others did not know what was good for them, they could not blame her. While Little Qing was burning with rage, Xiaochen, Lin Yun, and the beast slave quickly returned to the land of living beings. With Xiaochen and Lin Yun leading the way, their speed was naturally very fast. In just a little over 2 hours, they arrived at the land of living beings. When they arrived at the land of living beings, the beast slave's expression was the same as Sure Song's. They were both shocked. The land of living beings that had only been established for half a year had actually developed to this extent. How did you do it? They asked in disbelief. We didn't do it. It's the result of everyone's efforts. Hearing this, Xiaochen laughed heartily. The land of living beings was able to develop so quickly not because of Xiaochen and the others, but because of the efforts of all living beings in the world. Everyone understood that the land of living beings was their home. Therefore, everyone could be said to be united in the construction of the land of living beings. It could even be said that Xiaochen and the others had only established the land of living beings. As for other things, they really did not do much. The beast slave was shocked. At the same time, looking at Xiaochen on the side, all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. When he first saw Xiaochen, Xiaochen was still as weak as an ant in his eyes. However, in just a short period of time, Xiaochen had already reached such a level. He had far surpassed him, and was even able to contend with the spirits of the world. Even now, when he thought about this series of changes, it was like a dream. Soon, they returned to the Temple of All Saints. The beast slave saw Song, who had been waiting there for a long time. Seeing that the beast slave was safe and sound, Song was relieved. At the same time, Qin Shuru, Lu Bingning, and the others heard the news and quickly rushed over. Xiao Chen and the others went to rescue the beast slave, which indeed made the girls very worried. They succeeded? Isn't it obvious? Yes, but we might have to be careful of the land of living beings. Mu Lingxian, Mo He, and the others also arrived. After asking about the rescue process and learning that everything went smoothly, they all breathed a sigh of relief and began to be on guard. This time, they rescued the beast slave right under Little Qing's nose. According to Little Qing's current personality, it probably would not let this matter rest. However, they did not know what Little Qing would do, but the necessary precautions must be taken. Perhaps Little Qing would directly attack. This was something that no one could guarantee. In response, Xiao Chen and Lin Yun both nodded in agreement. Please add this to your collection. Monthly vote, recommend this. Chapter 2951. Successfully producing a beast slave was indeed something to be happy about. However, the necessary precautions couldn't be ignored. Successfully producing a beast slave was indeed something to be happy about. However, the necessary precautions couldn't be ignored. After suffering such a huge loss, in addition to Little Qing's unpredictable personality, who knew what he would do? Therefore, they had to pay attention to Mu Lingxian and the others' warning. Xiao Chen and Lin Yun were very clear about this. Yes, that's right. Besides Little Qing, we can't lower our guard against those old fellows from the origin world. Yes, although those old fellows haven't done anything in the past half a year, who knows what they're doing in the dark? Yes. They had to be on guard against the origin world and the land of creation. Neither side was easy to deal with. Little Qing's threat wasn't small, but the threat of the primogenitors couldn't be ignored. After a simple conversation, they arranged for people to be on guard against the movements of the origin world and the land of creation. They arranged for the beast slave and Song to live together. From now on, the two of them could be considered as members of the land of creation. The beast slave had to recuperate for a while because of his injuries. When they returned to their residence and sat down in the courtyard, Xiao Chen saw Xiao Lao running over happily. Seeing this, Xiao Chen scolded him with a smile. You're playing around again? Your brother is in seclusion. What about you? You don't even know how to cultivate. Dad, big brother is in seclusion because he's about to break through. I haven't reached the time yet. Naturally, I don't need to be in seclusion. Little brat, cultivate properly. Otherwise, I'll beat you up. Xiao Chen naturally doted on the two boys, Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao, especially Xiao Lao. He had been mischievous since he was young and had caused Xiao Chen a lot of trouble. Compared to the smart and sensible Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao was indeed more troublesome. However, the two brothers were very talented in cultivation. Especially Xiao Lao. Although he was the younger brother, his cultivation was higher than Xiao Yao's. Xiao Yao was still in seclusion to break through to the ancestor realm, but Xiao Lao had already broken through to the ancestor realm. Qin Shuru and the other girls smiled when they saw how close the father and son were. Flower Fairy even turned her head and teased Gu Lingyao, Tianyue, and Hongxiu. My three younger sisters, you have to hurry as well. Father and mother asked me a few days ago. Right now, Xiao Chen only had 2 sons and 1 daughter. Gu Lingyao, Tianyue, and Hongxiu didn't have any children yet. Xiao Chen didn't care much about this matter. After all, there were too many things that Xiao Chen had to deal with. It was hard for him to take care of these things. However, as parents, Xiao Qing and Bai Ruiyue didn't think the same way. Gu Lingyao and the other two didn't have a child for a long time, and this had become a huge matter in their hearts. As elders, the 2 elders naturally hoped to have a house full of children and grandchildren. Moreover, Xiao Yao and the other 2 had already grown up. To be honest, they didn't have much time to accompany the two elders. Therefore, the two elders also hoped that Gu Lingyao and the other two could have their own children soon. Hearing Flower Fairy's words, the three girls blushed. Chinshuru even teased them, which was rare. From today onwards, our husband will let you have him. Little sister Baihua and I will take the initiative to withdraw. How about it? Sister Shuai-Ro, what are you talking about? Even the eccentric Gu Lingyao blushed and acted coquettishly when she heard this. Smiling, the five girls quickly sat down on either side of Xiaochen. However, Gu Lingyao and the other two girls blushed while Flower Fairy gently massaged Xiaochen's shoulders. There was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Husband, Yaoer is in seclusion. Laoer is fine as well. However, Luan has been having some problems recently. What's wrong with Luan? Hearing this, Xiaochen asked curiously. Speaking of which, it seemed that he hadn't seen Luan for a very long time. Hearing this, Xiao Lao, who was at the side, immediately said, I know. What do you know, kid? Let me hear it. Big sister has someone she likes. Recently, they have been spending all their time together. They even went to many places to play. Facing Xiaochen's question, Xiao Lao said proudly. Hearing this, Xiaochen was stunned. Xiao Luan has someone she likes. Why didn't he know about this? He looked at Chinshuru and the other girls in confusion. Seeing this, Chinshuru scolded with a smile. Who can you blame? It's all because you have too many things to do and don't pay attention to the children. That's true. Tell me, who is the other party? In fact, Xiao Luan had reached the age of marriage, but if the man was not good enough, Xiaochen wouldn't agree. Although Xiao Luan wasn't his biological daughter, after so many years, Xiaochen had long regarded her as his own daughter. Even after Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao were born, Xiaochen's love for Xiao Luan didn't decrease. After all, a daughter was naturally more heartwarming than a son. Seeing Xiaochen's curious and somewhat nervous expression, Chinshuru and the other girls couldn't help but smile. The dignified divine ancestor was surprisingly nervous. Perhaps this was the only thing that could make Xiaochen show such an expression. Speaking of which, you know that person. It's Lin Yun's only son, Lin Feng. Chinshuru didn't beat around the bush and directly told Xiaochen. Hearing that it was Lin Feng, Xiaochen was stunned. Although Xiaochen didn't have much contact with Lin Feng, he still knew him. This boy was indeed good. He was talented and had a good character. In addition, his father was Lin Yun, who was on good terms with his family. For Xiao Luan, he was indeed a good match. So it's this stinky boy. Xiaochen laughed heartily. He didn't have any doubts about Lin Feng. If the two were really in love, Xiaochen would certainly not object. However, Lin Yun wanted his precious daughter to be his daughter-in-law. He wouldn't let him get it so easily. No, I have to go to Lin Yun's place tomorrow. My daughter can't marry him so carelessly. Among the crowd, Xiaochen and Lin Yun's relationship was the best. Naturally, he didn't have any misgivings when he spoke. A few days ago, Bing Ning and Qing Zhu came in person, saying that they wanted to discuss the date of the engagement and settle the matter of the two boys as soon as possible. So soon? Soon? You really don't care about anything. Luan has already come to discuss this matter with us, and so has Lin Feng. How come I didn't know about it at all? You don't know anymore. Xiao Luan and Lin Feng had already reached the point of discussing the marriage. Xiaochen was surprised when he heard that. He didn't expect that his precious daughter would be getting married in the blink of an eye. He didn't know what to feel in his heart. He was happy, excited, and gratified, but more than that, he seemed to be reluctant. When he thought that his daughter, who had always been by his side, was about to get married, Xiaochen felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2952. Xiao Luan's matter really surprised Xiaochen, because he didn't hear any news at all. Xiao Luan's matter really surprised Xiaochen, because he didn't hear any news at all. The next morning, Xiaochen couldn't help looking for Lin Yun. Seeing Xiaochen looking for her so early in the morning, Lin Yun asked curiously. "Looking for me so early in the morning, is there something else?" "There must be something, and it's a big matter." "Oh, tell me about it." Xiaochen's words quickly aroused Lin Yun's interest. What big matter could make Xiaochen come to her so early in the morning? While the two were talking, Lu Bingning, Qing Zhu, and other Lin Yun's wives also came over. Looking at Xiaochen's complicated expression, the women covered their mouths and chuckled. Like Xiaochen, Lin Yun didn't know about this matter. After all, the two were too busy recently, so they naturally neglected these things. She looked at Xiaochen doubtfully. Seeing this, Xiaochen said angrily. "It seems that you don't know anything either. Where's your son now?" "Feng'er? What's wrong? Did this kid annoy you? You're so old and you still want to argue with a child?" "Nonsense, if I don't argue, I'm afraid my daughter will be abducted." "En?" The more she talked, the more confused she became. In the end, Lu Bingning and the other women came forward and told Lin Yun the truth. Hearing that Lin Feng was actually with Xiaochen's daughter, Xiao Luan, Lin Yun was stunned at first, then she laughed loudly. "Ah, good, Feng'er did a good job. You found me a good daughter-in-law." Saying this, Lin Yun also looked at Xiaochen provocatively. In this regard, Xiaochen curled his lips and ignored this arrogant guy. However, how could Lin Yun, who was in a good mood, let go of Xiaochen so easily? She put her arm around Xiaochen's shoulder and said with a smile. "Ha, brother Xiaochen, this is a good thing. Our families will be even closer." "Stop, I haven't agreed yet. Don't be happy too early." The more Lin Yun acted like this, the more unhappy Xiaochen was in his heart. The daughter that he raised for so many years became someone else's daughter-in-law all of a sudden. This feeling was really uncomfortable. Lin Yun didn't care about this at all. Lu Bing and the other women on the side also covered their mouths in chuckles, without any intention to interrupt. "In-law, what do you think would be better for our wedding?" "Ha! Xiao! Xiaochen Ti! Chen!" Seeing this, Lin Yun couldn't help but shudder. "What are you trying to do, kid?" "Nothing, but since you said that we'll be even closer, I remember that you have a daughter, right? Her name is Lin Shui, right?" "Xiaochen, I'm telling you, don't have any ideas about Shuer. That's hard to say. Just like you said, it's not good for us to stop this kind of thing. I've successfully won back this round. If your son marries my daughter, then I'll let my son marry your daughter too. Everyone's even." Xiaochen's face was full of smiles, while Lin Yun was in a bad mood. Xiaochen walked away in laughter. "Damn it, this Xiaochen. Where's Shuer? Tell her not to go out for the time being and keep an eye on him." After Xiaochen left, Lin Yun said with a face full of fear. Lin Yun had seen Xiaochen's two sons. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were giants among men. If these two boys made a move, Shuer would probably fall for them. Originally, Lin Yun was very happy that Lin Feng was able to get Xiaochen's daughter. But now, Xiaochen actually had ideas about her daughter, which made Lin Yun nervous. In a good mood, they returned to their residence. Seeing Xiaochen return happily, Qin Shuru and the other girls asked curiously. "Husband, what are you so happy about?" "Ha, I found a marriage for Yaoer and Laoer." "Oh, whose daughter is it?" "Ha, Lin Yun's daughter, Lin Shui." "How is it?" "Not bad, right?" Hearing this, Qin Shuru and the other girls burst into laughter. They finally understood why Xiaochen was so happy. It was because of this matter. But putting this aside, Lin Yun's daughter, Lin Shui, was indeed not bad. She was a good match for Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao. Lin Shui is indeed not bad, but do you plan to choose Yaoer or Laoer? He had two sons, but Lin Yun only had one daughter. In this regard, Xiaochen thought for a moment and said, "There's no hurry. When the time comes, we'll ask for their opinions." But let me tell you, Lin Yun's face, it really makes me feel good. When he thought of Lin Yun's dark face when he left, Xiaochen couldn't help but laugh loudly. He was in a very good mood. At this time, Xiao Luan, who had gone out to play with Lin Feng for half a month, also returned. Seeing Xiao Luan walking into the courtyard, Xiaochen called out, "Luan Luan." "Father." Seeing Xiaochen, Xiao Luan was also very happy. She quickly walked in front of Xiaochen and jumped onto Xiaochen's body. Although she had grown up, she was still very attached to Xiaochen. What's more, in recent years, it had been difficult for her to see Xiaochen. The father and daughter didn't have much time to spend together. Therefore, every time she saw Xiaochen, Xiao Luan was very happy. Xiaochen was the same. He patted Xiao Luan's shoulder with a smile and scolded with a smile. "You're so rude. You're already so old, and you're still like this. It's nothing. Who asked me to like Daddy? But after all, you've grown up. I heard that you already have someone you like." As soon as these words came out, Xiao Luan's face turned red. She immediately jumped down and didn't dare to look at Xiaochen's face. She lowered her head and didn't know what to do for a moment. Xiao Luan and Lin Feng really liked each other. Looking at his daughter's bashful appearance, Xiaochen was amused and burst into laughter. He sighed in his heart. His daughter had indeed grown up. Now, she already had someone she liked. Don't worry. I'm not a stubborn person. Besides, I also like Lin Feng. A few days ago, I even went to see your Uncle Lin. I went to see Uncle Lin. Of course. His son almost kidnapped my daughter. How could I not go and ask him for an explanation? Xiao Luan couldn't help but smile. Her father was really cute. However, thinking about the relationship between her father and Uncle Lin, it didn't seem like there was any problem. It could be said that they were life and death friends. The two families had always been on good terms. Moreover, her mother and Lu Bingning were also very close. Thinking of this, Xiao Luan looked at Lin Yun, embarrassed. Lin Yun said, "Next time, I'll bring Lin Feng over for a meal. Oh, by the way, bring his sister Lin Shui, too." It had been a long time since he had seen Lin Feng. Besides, with his relationship with Xiao Luan, it was natural for Xiaochen to see him. "Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 2953. When Xiao Luan saw that her father wasn't angry at all and even took the initiative to invite Lin Feng over for dinner, she was happy. When Xiao Luan saw that her father wasn't angry and even took the initiative to invite Lin Feng over for dinner, she was happy. After all, even though Xiao Luan wasn't worried that Xiaochen would object to her being with Lin Feng, Xiaochen didn't know about it before, so she was a bit nervous. Now, from the looks of it, father seemed to be very supportive of this matter. But inviting Lin Feng over for dinner was normal, but why did he bring Lin Shui? Even though Xiao Luan and Lin Feng were friends and Lin Shui knew each other, it had nothing to do with Lin Shui. "Dad, why did you bring little Shui?" "I have my reasons, of course. You can call me that." Xiaochen replied with a smile. He was still thinking about how wonderful Lin Yun's expression would be if he managed to take Lin Shui down. With that thought in mind, Xiaochen smiled and walked away. It seemed that he had gone to look for Xiao Yao and Xiao Luan. "Mom, what's going on with Dad?" "Don't worry about him. He's getting more and more immature." "Come, tell me what happened this time," said Xiao Luan. She sat down with Xiao Luan. Compared to Xiaochen, Qin Shuru and the others cared more about Xiao Luan. They wanted to know whether she was happy with Lin Feng or not. The mother and daughters chatted while Xiaochen went to see Xiao Yao. Xiao Yao had already come out of seclusion. When she saw Xiaochen, Xiao Yao smiled. "Father." "Yes, not bad. Your cultivation level is stable now." Xiao Yao had just broken through to the ancestor layer, so her cultivation level was stable. The father and son were sitting opposite each other in the courtyard. When Xiao Yao saw that Xiaochen had taken the initiative to come over, she didn't understand. "Father, why did you come to see me?" Normally, Xiaochen was very busy, so he rarely came to see Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao. Speaking of which, Xiaochen really didn't care enough about her children. Xiaochen also felt guilty about this. Xiaochen answered Xiao Yao's question with a smile. "I haven't had much to do in the past few days, so I came to visit you. Speaking of which, it's been a long time since we've talked like this." After making up an excuse, Xiaochen and Xiao Yao started chatting. Of course, what he said was meaningless. Originally, Xiaochen wanted to ask Xiao Yao what he thought of Lin Shui. However, Xiaochen had never experienced something like this before. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Xiao Yao could tell that her father seemed to have something to say but kept avoiding the topic, so she took the initiative to ask. "Father, if you have something to say, just say it." Okay. I've been thinking recently that you're not young anymore. I should find a marriage for you. I don't know what you think, so I plan to be steady." As soon as he said this, Xiao Yao was stunned at first. Then, she didn't know what to do. Xiaochen didn't notice Xiao Yao's reaction at all. "Of course, this matter is mainly up to you. If you don't want to, then just pretend that I didn't say anything." "Father, actually, I already have someone I like." "Oh, what? You also have someone you like? Who is it?" He originally wanted to matchmake Xiao Yao and Xuelin, but he didn't expect that Xiao Yao also had someone she liked. Why didn't he know about this? In fact, Xiaochen was too surprised for a moment. Let alone Xiaochen, even Xiao Yao's biological mother, Qin Shiru, didn't know about Xiao Yao's matter. Looking at her father's stunned expression, Xiao Yao was even more embarrassed. Xiao Yao, who had been extremely intelligent since she was young, rarely showed such an expression on her face. Under Xiaochen's questioning, Xiao Yao finally stammered. It's Dongfang Lin." "Dongfang Lin? Dongfang Yun's daughter?" A strange glint flashed in his eyes as he stared blankly at Xiao Yao. Xiaochen didn't speak for a long time. The main thing was that he didn't know what to say. He never thought that Xiao Yao would actually get together with Dongfang Yun. It wasn't that Xiaochen didn't like Dongfang Lin, but it was because of her mother. His relationship with Dongfang Lin's mother, Dongfang Yun, was a little complicated. Especially when they were in the land of creation, it made things a little awkward. Since then, although the two of them tacitly didn't mention that matter again, it wasn't something that could be easily forgotten. He had always deliberately avoided one-on-one contact with Dongfang Yun because it was a little awkward. But he never thought that his son would actually fall in love with Dongfang Yun's daughter. This was really unexpected. Moreover, Xiaochen knew Xiao Yao's temper very well. She was a person who had her own opinions. Since Xiao Yao could say that she liked Dongfang Lin, then this matter couldn't be false. It seemed that he could only rely on Xiao Lao for Lin Shui's matter. He just didn't know if that little brat could win Lin Shui's heart. He also asked a few more questions about Dongfang Lin, such as when the two of them started dating. As for Xiao Luan, she went to Lin Yun's house the next day. Seeing Xiao Luan, Lin Yun, who was drinking tea in the courtyard, said with a smile, Luan, you're here. Are you looking for Feng'er?" "Uncle Lin," Xiao Luan called out. Her face was red. Facing Lin Yun, for some reason, Xiao Luan was very nervous this time. Seeing this, Lin Yun also laughed happily. Xiao Chen's daughter was really good. It was very good to have her as her daughter-in-law. Previously, Lin Yun didn't know about Xiao Luan and Lin Feng's relationship, but now that she knew, the more she looked at Xiao Luan, the more satisfied she was. Such a daughter-in-law met Lin Yun's requirements. Being stared at by Lin Yun, Xiao Luan was very shy, but she still mustered up her courage and said, "Uncle Lin, my father wants to invite you and brother Lin Feng to have a meal at his house." "Ha, it's normal. Even if Xiaochen didn't ask, I also wanted to have a gathering with the two families. After all, you and Feng'er's relationship can be settled." Father also said that he would invite Sister Shuai. Lin Yun, who was originally very happy, suddenly heard that Xiaochen wanted to invite Lin Shuai. Suddenly, Lin Yun's face became gloomy. This guy is actually serious. When she thought of this, Lin Yun was extremely unhappy. Oh, this is what your father said? Yes, I don't know what father means, but he specifically said to invite Sister Shuai. Alright, I understand. You go to the backyard and look for Feng. We old guys don't want to get involved in the affairs of you young people. Xiao Luan left with a red face. Lin Yun's face was cold. What a good Xiaochen, he actually had ideas about my daughter. You want my daughter to be your daughter-in-law? Dream on, Xiaochen. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2954. 3 days later, Xiaochen invited Lin Yun's family to a banquet. Of course, Lin Shuai, whom he valued the most, also came. With a dark face, Lin Yun took the lead and walked into the courtyard. When she saw Xiaochen, she snorted coldly, as if she wanted to tear him apart. Xiaochen had only himself to blame for inviting Lin Shuai to his place. Originally, it was impossible for Lin Yun to agree to let Lin Shuai come, but she had no choice. In the end, Xiaochen was one step ahead and Lin Shuai came along. He didn't care about Lin Yun's dark face at all. He took the initiative to walk up with a smile and said with a bright face. Feng is here too. Haha, not bad, not bad. Xiaochen first praised Lin Feng. In front of Xiaochen, Lin Feng was also very embarrassed. Fortunately, Xiaochen's main target this time was not Lin Feng, so after a few words, Xiaochen turned to look at Lin Shuai. A strange look flashed in his eyes, and his smile became even more brilliant. Shuai is really getting more and more beautiful. In this regard, Lin Shuai blushed and lowered her head without saying anything. When Xiaochen saw this, he couldn't stop smiling. Hey, are you done talking? Do you still want to eat? Seeing Xiaochen staring at her precious daughter, and even kept winking at Xiao Lao, Lin Yun couldn't help but snort coldly. Lin Yun couldn't help snorting coldly. This guy was simply brazen and didn't put him in his eyes at all. Ha, you're right. Let's eat first. In this regard, Xiaochen said with a smile. He was in a good mood today, so he didn't argue with this guy. It wasn't the first time the two families had eaten together. In the past, when Xiaochen and Lin Yun were not around, Lu Bingning and Qin Shuru would often get together. This led to a good relationship between the younger generation of the two families. Even without Xiaochen saying anything, Xiao Lao had already started chatting with Shuai. Seeing Xiao Lao making Shuai laugh, Xiaochen was in a good mood. This kid had some skills. He didn't even need to remind him. Compared to Xiaochen's good mood, Lin Yun had mixed feelings about this. Especially after knowing what Xiaochen was thinking and looking at Xiao Luan who was chatting with Shuai, he felt uncomfortable. It was as if something important was about to be snatched away from him. Today is a joyous day. Why are you pulling a long face? Come, let's drink. Xiaochen took the initiative to invite Lin Yun to drink. She snorted coldly, but still raised her wine glass. During the meal, Xiaochen and Lin Yun were secretly competing with each other. Looking at Qin Shuru, Lu Bingning and the other girls shook their heads and smiled bitterly. Sometimes, these two guys really didn't seem like the people who were called divine ancestors. When their little temper flared up, it really made people laugh. The meal was quite good. Other than Lin Yun and Xiaochen secretly competing with each other, there was nothing else. Of course, everyone was not afraid that the two would really get angry. With their relationship, it was impossible for them to get angry over such a small matter. It was more like they were just fooling around. Give up. My daughter will never marry your son. Lin Yun said coldly before he left. In response, Xiaochen smiled and said, Don't worry, master. You can't say that. Who knows what these little guys are thinking? Let's not worry about this matter. Let's wait and see. I will never agree. Lin Yun took the initiative to leave with a dark face. Just after Lin Yun left, Xiao Chen gave Xiao Lao a thumbs up. Looking at his father's smile, Xiao Lao did not react for a while. Only Xiao Luan and Xiao Yao at the side held their foreheads and shook their heads helplessly. Their father obviously intended to let Xiao Lao pursue Lin Shui. Unfortunately, Xiao Lao knew nothing about these things. However, looking at Lin Shui's attitude towards Xiao Lao, she did not seem to hate him. Perhaps there was a chance. They returned to their room in a good mood. In the land of creation, Xiao Chen and the others were not in a good mood at this time. Ever since Xiao Chen and Lin Yun rescued the beast slaves, little Qing became more and more gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. In the beginning, Old Tree and the others were worried that little Qing would attack the land of creation out of anger. It was not a good thing to attack the land of creation rashly under the current circumstances. There was still the origin world eyeing it covetously. The primogenitors hoped that the land of creation and the land of creation would fight. That way, they would be able to reap the benefits. However, after a few days, little Qing did not do anything strange. Old Tree and the others gradually relaxed. It was indeed good news that little Qing could remain calm and control his emotions. However, Old Tree and the others did not know that little Qing had never given up on revenge. Little Qing knew that he could not start a war with the land of creation. However, he was extremely unwilling to just let it go. Therefore, little Qing had been preparing for something in the past few days. At this time, little Qing, who had not gone out for a few days, suddenly revealed a cold smile. He had finally gathered all the things he wanted. Xiao Chen, Lin Yun, you deserve to die. His eyes were overflowing with killing intent. It was obvious that he had not truly let go of the anger in his heart. This time, little Qing wanted to give Xiao Chen and the others a painful lesson. Since he could not start a war with the land of creation, he had to at least leave a deep impression on Xiao Chen and the others. With this thought in mind, little Qing's figure flashed and instantly disappeared from the spot. Old Tree and the Stone Spirit Clan's patriarch happened to come. However, after looking around, they could not find little Qing's figure. Where did the world spirit go? Asked the Stone Spirit Clan's patriarch, puzzled. The Old Tree was taken aback at first, but he quickly reacted and his expression changed abruptly. Oh no! What's wrong? I'm afraid the world spirit has gone to the land of creation. With Old Tree's understanding of little Qing, he definitely would not let it go so easily. Therefore, Old Tree had been paying close attention to little Qing's movements in the past few days. He originally thought that little Qing would have calmed down after a few days. However, who would have thought that little Qing would not give up on revenge? At this moment, little Qing was not in the land of creation. The only place he could have gone to was the land of creation. However, the land of creation could not be underestimated. With the strength of Xiao Chen and the other divine ancestors, they were not afraid of little Qing. Little Qing had gone there alone. How could he gain any advantage? If the land of creation was really in existence that could be destroyed at will, it would not have been able to stand tall in this world. It had already been destroyed by the origin world and the land of creation. Because its strength could not be underestimated, everyone had chosen to temporarily control it. No one wanted to be the first to make the first move. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2955. Realizing that the world spirit might have gone to the land of all living beings to seek revenge, the Old Tree and the Stone Spirit Patriarch instantly tensed up. Realizing that the world spirit might have gone to the land of all living beings to seek revenge, the Old Tree and the Stone Spirit Patriarch instantly tensed up. Wasn't this a joke? How could a person be so reckless when going to the land of all living beings? The Old Tree and the others had always been aware of the change in the world spirit's personality, but they didn't expect it to have changed to this extent. If it was the old little Qing, she definitely wouldn't have done something so impulsive, but now, how should they put it? Little Qing's personality had become vengeful, and she couldn't bear the slightest grievance. This time, Xiaochen and Lin Yan actually dared to barge into the land of creation to save someone. This was even more unbearable for little Qing. It was no wonder that little Qing would act like this. But now, the old tree and the others couldn't ignore it. After all, if something happened to the world spirit, the land of creation would probably be the first to be destroyed. At that time, even if Xiaochen and the others didn't act, the primogenitors wouldn't let go of this opportunity. Therefore, without hesitation, the old tree gathered all the primordial creatures in the land of creation and hurried to the land of all living beings. At the same time, outside the land of all living beings, little Qing had arrived alone. As soon as she appeared, she was actually discovered by Xiaochen and the others. After the incident with the beast slaves, Xiaochen and the others naturally had to guard against little Qing's revenge. Therefore, Xiaochen and the others took turns to be on guard every day. Their divine senses were comparable to the primogenitors, covering the entire land of all living beings. As long as there was any sign of trouble, they would immediately check it out. Today, it was Dongfang Yun's turn to be on guard. At first, there was no problem, but just now, Dongfang Yun clearly sensed little Qing's aura. Dongfang Yun abruptly opened his eyes, and a strange glint flashed through his eyes. He immediately contacted Xiaochen and the others. Little Qing's appearance in the land of all living beings wasn't good news, and they couldn't afford the slightest bit of carelessness. Soon, Xiaochen and the others arrived at the main hall. The world spirit really came? They're here. They're right outside the land of all living beings, but they don't seem to have any intention of entering. Dongfang Yun had been paying attention to little Qing's actions. The restrictions around the land of creation could not stop Xiaochen and the others. Similarly, the restrictions in the land of living beings could not stop little Qing. But little Qing had no intention of entering the land of all living beings. Instead, she was setting up something outside the land of all living beings. Hearing Dongfang Yun's words, Xiaochen and the others were stunned. Then, they spread out their divine senses and quickly found little Qing. Sure enough, little Qing circled around the land of all living beings and seemed to be setting up something. She had no intention of entering at all. What does that mean? Setting up a formation? He guessed that little Qing was probably setting up an array formation. At the same time, little Qing, who was outside, also felt Xiaochen and the others' spiritual senses sweep over. He had long known that Xiaochen and the others had discovered him, and that Xiaochen and the others had been watching his every move. However, little Qing did not panic in the slightest. On the contrary, the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. Little Qing only sneered when the last step of the arrangement was completed. Xiaochen, Lin Yun, since you've already discovered me, why bother hiding? Following little Qing's voice, illusory figures condensed in the sky. Xiaochen and the others appeared. Looking at little Qing, Xiaochen took the initiative to speak. Little Qing, we don't have any enmity with the land of creation. There's no need to kill each other and let others take advantage of us. Xiaochen did not want to fight to the death with little Qing. Now that he had created the land of all living beings, he could protect all living beings in the world and give them a stable environment to live in. Xiaochen was already very satisfied. As for destroying the origin world and the land of creation, to be honest, Xiaochen had never thought about it. He did not want to compete for anything, nor did he want to dominate the world. The only thing he wanted was to give all living beings in the world a stable life. Now that he had accomplished all of that, Xiaochen had no intention of becoming enemies with the land of creation. Earlier, he had saved the beast slave completely because they were friends. It was impossible for him to watch the beast slave die without doing anything. Therefore, during the rescue process, Xiaochen and Lin Yan basically did not kill anyone. They only considered it a success after rescuing the beast slave. However, little Qing sneered in response to this. Have no intention of becoming enemies? Xiaochen, you betrayed me. Now you're saying you have no intention of becoming enemies? People who walk different paths cannot make plans together. Your actions are no different from those of the origin world. I'm just doing it for the sake of all living beings in the world. How could this be considered betrayal? If Little Qing had not insisted on learning from the origin world and grasping the revival technique, how could Xiaochen have done this? Little Qing clearly did not believe Xiaochen when she heard this. They had already come to this point, so it was useless to say anything now. Little Qing swept her gaze past Xiaochen and the others before she sneered in the end. There's no point in talking. Let's fight. Nether Baleful Soul Refining Formation, activate. As soon as Little Qing spoke, an enormous formation that enveloped the entire land of creation rumbled as it was activated. In an instant, the land of creation was enveloped by the formation. The Nether Baleful Soul Refining Formation can refine the souls of all living beings. Xiaochen, if you want to break through the formation, then come. As soon as she finished speaking, Little Qing's figure flashed into the formation. On the other hand, Xiaochen and the others in the hall had extremely unsightly expressions. They had never imagined that Little Qing had actually set up such a formation. Even though they didn't know much about the Nether Baleful Soul Refining Formation, Xiaochen and the others clearly sensed that strands of indescribable aura had already seeped into the land of creation after the formation appeared. Even though the aura did not affect Xiaochen and the others, it was completely different to those with lower cultivations. Under the envelopment of such an aura, cultivators with lower cultivations simply couldn't hold on for long. If it was really as Little Qing had said, it was very likely that their souls would be directly refined. This formation is strange. We must break it as soon as possible, Moe said first. There was no doubt that they had to break the formation. Little Qing's meaning was also very clear. If they wanted to break the formation, then they had to fight it out with it. Little Qing was waiting for them and the others in the formation. This was probably Little Qing's way of revenge. She didn't launch a large-scale attack, but she had used a formation, leaving Xiaochen and the others with no choice. Unless Xiaochen and the others were willing to give up on the numerous living beings in the land of creation, but that was obviously impossible. Xiaochen and the others would not give up on these people. Therefore, there was only one path left, and that was to break the formation and fight Little Qing head-on. Let's break the formation. Ancestor He and Dongfang Yun stay behind to prevent the formation from spreading in by time. I, Lin Yun, and Mu Lingxian will go and break the formation, Xiaochen said. Regarding this, no one had any objections. Xiaochen and the others were enough to break the formation. Even if they had to fight against Little Qing, they could still fight. Please collect, please vote, please recommend me. Chapter 2956. Dongfang Yun, Mo He, and Ancestor He would stay outside to prevent the formation from spreading, while Xiao Chen's group would break the formation. No one had any objections to this. After discussing, Xiao Chen, Lin Yun, and Mu Lingxian directly rushed into the formation. The Nether Fiendish Soul Refining Formation directly enveloped the entire land of sentient beings. They had to find a way to break it. Otherwise, Xiao Chen's group could ignore the formation's power, but others couldn't. Little Qing had obviously thought of this, which was why she set up the Nether Fiendish Soul Refining Formation. It was to force Xiao Chen's group to break the formation, so Little Qing could take revenge this time. After entering the formation, Xiao Chen's group was quickly enveloped by a dense blood qi. The Nether Fiendish Soul Refining Formation gave people an incomparably evil feeling. Obviously, it wasn't a righteous method. However, for Little Qing, there was no difference whether it was righteous or evil. This formation's grade isn't low. Be careful, Mu Lingxian reminded. Among the three, only Mu Lingxian had some knowledge of formations. Xiao Chen and Lin Yun basically didn't know much about formations. For a moment, they couldn't see the problem with the formation. However, after hearing Mu Lingxian's words, the two nodded. Little Qing should be at the formation's core. Xiao Chen's group went deeper, but soon, the blood qi became denser. Not only their vision, but even their divine sense was affected by the blood qi. Soon, their divine sense was useless, and Xiao Chen's group was separated. Everything was too strange. Clearly, this was Little Qing's intention. After being separated from Lin Yun and Mu Ling Xian, Xiao Chen didn't panic too much. Instead, he kept going deeper. In fact, Xiao Chen didn't know if his current discovery was right. Because under such a dense blood qi, Xiao Chen couldn't tell the direction. He didn't know where he was going. However, while Xiao Chen was walking, on the other side, Lin Yun and Mu Ling Xian were the same. The three of them seemed to be trapped in the formation. In the end, he still couldn't find Little Qing's location. He couldn't even find the eye of the array. After a fruitless search, Xiao Chen simply stopped in his tracks. His gaze was faint as he looked in front of him and spoke in a clear voice. Little Qing, since you want revenge, why are you hiding? Since he couldn't find Little Qing, he would let Little Qing find him. After all, Little Qing was here for revenge. Because he couldn't swallow the anger in his heart, he created such a formation. In this way, even if Xiao Chen couldn't find Little Qing would definitely appear. Xiao Chen wasn't worried about this at all. Sure enough, as his voice fell, Little Qing's figure slowly walked out of the blood mist in front of him. Since this array formation was set up by Little Qing, then he could naturally move freely within the array formation. Now that he had successfully separated Xiao Chen and the other two, Little Qing appeared in front of Xiao Chen. He didn't look worried at all. Instead, he sneered. In a one-on-one situation, Little Qing wasn't afraid of Xiao Chen. Although Xiao Chen's strength had surpassed the primogenitors, there was still a gap between him and Little Qing. Xiao Chen. He looked coldly at Xiao Chen. Hearing that, Xiao Chen said somewhat helplessly, I didn't expect that we would end up like this. Didn't you cause all of this? Wrong, it wasn't me. My goal is actually very simple. You also know that it's for the people of the world. As for the ownership of this world, I have no intention of fighting for it. Whether it's you or the primogenitors, I don't have any ambition. Then why did you sneak into the place where I created this world? The beast slave is my friend. I can't just watch her die like that. It's that simple. Xiao Chen really just wanted to be content with his territory. He had no intention of fighting for the ownership of the origin world. The reason was simple. Xiao Chen's power didn't come from the world but from the people of the world. Therefore, even if Xiao Chen fought for the ownership of the world wouldn't acknowledge him. Fundamentally, Xiao Chen's group was completely different from the primogenitors and Little Qing. That was why Xiao Chen said that Little Qing shouldn't start a war with the land of the living. Because it was completely meaningless. It would only make the origin world happy. Moreover, even if Little Qing and the primogenitors won, Xiao Chen wouldn't be a threat to them. As long as they didn't have any ideas about the people of the world, Xiao Chen wouldn't take the initiative to provoke them. It should have been easy to understand, but because of the hatred in his heart, Little Qing had deliberately ignored this. He had treated them as enemies and ignored the origin world and the primogenitors. However, based on Little Qing's appearance, he hadn't ordered the army of the land of creation to attack them directly. Obviously, he'd restrained himself. He knew that once he started a full-scale war with Xiao Chen's group, it would only benefit the origin world. That was why Little Qing had set up a formation. Even though he was angry, he hadn't completely lost his mind. That was why Xiao Chen was willing to tell Little Qing so much. Little Qing's expression was still gloomy when he heard Xiao Chen's words. There's no need to say anything. It's meaningless to say all this now. Let's talk after the battle. Little Qing snorted coldly and attacked first. He pointed his finger at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen had a thought when faced with Little Qing's attack. The dustless sword appeared in his hand and he swung it fiercely. The two of them engaged in battle. This could be considered the first time Xiao Chen and Little Qing had fought head-on. Previously, Xiao Chen had fought Little Qing with Lin Yun and the others. This time, it was a fair battle between the two of them. However, in terms of combat strength, Xiao Chen was indeed inferior to Little Qing. However, after half a year, Xiao Chen had gradually grasped his own strength. His combat strength was indeed much stronger than half a year ago. He was suppressed by Little Qing as soon as the battle began. However, Xiaochen wasn't too upset because it was within his expectations. As the spirit of the world, it was basically impossible for someone stronger than Little Qing to appear in the world. This was something that the world didn't allow. Otherwise, how could the spirit of the world represent the world? In a one-on-one situation, Little Qing was invincible. This was something that everyone acknowledged. However, it wasn't easy for Little Qing to kill Xiaochen. At the very least, it was very difficult for Little Qing right now. She could suppress Xiaochen, but it was very difficult for her to kill him. Not to mention that Xiaochen had the strength of all living beings. It was even more difficult to kill him. With the strength of all living beings, Xiaochen's vitality had reached a terrifying level. Even if there was only a drop of blood left, he could be reborn. Therefore, it was very difficult for Xiaochen to die even if he wanted to. The two of them engaged in a fierce battle. No one in the formation stopped the two of them. Little Qing and Xiaochen could fight to their heart's content. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2957. Inside the formation, Xiaochen and Little Qing were fighting fiercely. Facing Xiaochen, Little Qing attacked him like a madman. Inside the formation, Xiaochen and Little Qing were fighting fiercely. Facing Xiaochen, Little Qing attacked him like a madman. It was as if she would not stop until she killed Xiaochen. However, what was strange was that although Little Qing's attacks seemed crazy, Xiaochen, who was facing Little Qing, did not feel much killing intent. A strange look flashed in Little Qing's eyes. At the same time, Little Qing questioned in a deep voice. Why? Why did you betray me? Hearing this, Xiaochen's heart froze. He seemed to have guessed Little Qing's thoughts and said indifferently. I said that it wasn't betrayal. People who walk different paths cannot make plans together. Could it be that in your heart, I am inferior to all living beings? Little Qing really hated Xiaochen. However, Little Qing's hatred was because of Xiaochen's betrayal. The so-called hatred was only because she could not let go. Therefore, whenever she encountered something related to Xiaochen, Little Qing would become a different person. From the beginning to the end, since the day she was born, Little Qing had no friends. Xiaochen was the first person that Little Qing truly accepted. Unlike Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, and the others, Little Qing truly treated Xiaochen as her friend. Little Qing felt very comfortable with Xiaochen. It was precisely because she valued Xiaochen that when Xiaochen resisted her, Little Qing felt that it was a betrayal. Because in Little Qing's mind, friends should trust each other unconditionally. They should be inseparable no matter what. However, Xiaochen chose to betray her for the sake of those ants in the world. This made Little Qing feel very hurt. It was also this hurt that made Little Qing's personality change drastically. She became violent, impulsive, and angry. Because whenever she heard news about Xiaochen, Little Qing could not control her emotions. She was still reluctant to part with him, which was why Little Qing was like this. If Xiaochen had treated Little Qing like an ordinary person, then things would not have developed to this point. Looking at the red-eyed Little Qing, Xiaochen seemed to have guessed something. He took a deep breath as he attacked. As I said, that's not betrayal. Actually, if you're willing to sit down and talk, we don't have to be enemies. Is that even possible? Little Qing asked coldly. His attacks became even more ferocious. As he attacked, he said to Xiaochen coldly. Ever since you entered the land of creation, the first time we met, I've treated you as a friend. Did you know that although I've been a spirit of heaven and earth for so many years, I've never had a single friend by my side? It was you who let me know the meaning of friends, but it was also you who betrayed me. It was the first time I felt betrayed by a friend. In your heart, I'm not even comparable to those ants. For those ants, you'd rather fight me. Back in the Nether Child universe, I cut off your support and let you fight Ancestor Mu alone. But did you know that I've been secretly paying attention to the Nether Child universe? As long as there's danger, I'll definitely take action immediately. Seeing him again after half a year, little Qing couldn't help but roar and reveal his inner thoughts for the past half a year. This was often the case. If you had never possessed something before, then you wouldn't feel much about it. However, once you had something and lost it again, it would be completely different. Little Qing felt the meaning of the word friend from Xiaochen. After breaking off with Xiaochen, little Qing felt lonely for the first time. And that loneliness was something that Old Tree and the others couldn't replace. Although Old Tree and the others accompanied him, they weren't Xiaochen, and little Qing had never treated them as his friends. Because of this, whenever he thought of Xiaochen and even wanted to take the initiative to look for Xiaochen, little Qing would become abnormally manic. This was also the reason why little Qing's personality had changed so much in the past half a year. It was because little Qing thought of Xiaochen but didn't know what to do. Every time this happened, little Qing couldn't help but feel annoyed. Upon hearing little Qing's words, Xiaochen didn't answer. He immediately stopped what he was doing and looked at little Qing with a complicated gaze. As a spirit of heaven and earth, little Qing was like a child when it came to these matters. Living in the land of creation all year round, little Qing was indeed very lonely. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sealed his soul to experience a different life. He recalled the first time he saw little Qing. At that time, little Qing was just a stalk of grass. In fact, he should have known from the beginning that little Qing was really a very lonely person. His appearance allowed little Qing to experience the feeling of having friends by his side. Unfortunately, this kind of companionship ultimately caused little Qing to be deeply hurt. A break between friends was something that little Qing had never encountered before. He didn't know how to deal with it at all. That was why he seemed to have become a different person. Attack. What's the meaning of this? Little Qing shouted coldly when he saw Xiaochen stop what he was doing. The coldness in his eyes didn't recede by much. However, Xiaochen wasn't worried at all when he saw how little Qing looked like he wanted to tear him apart. This was because Xiaochen understood that little Qing didn't want to kill him. As a result, Xiaochen only smiled when he heard little Qing's words. I'm not fighting. What's the point of fighting with friends? Who's your friend? Little Qing was taken aback. He immediately shouted angrily. However, the trace of panic in his eyes was clearly visible. Hearing the word friend from Xiaochen, little Qing couldn't help but feel excited. However, he didn't dare to show it on his face. Xiaochen couldn't help but laugh when he saw little Qing's change. He thought to himself, little Qing hasn't changed at all. It's all because his desire to win is too strong. Just like when I first met little Qing, this spirit of heaven and earth is actually pure and innocent. Most of the time, he's like a child who doesn't know the ways of the world. However, after opening the land of creation, little Qing was too eager to win in the face of the threat from the primogenitors. In some aspects, little Qing was indeed inferior to the primogenitors. Especially in terms of scheming, he was worlds apart from them. Xiaochen said with a smile in the face of little Qing's angry roar. Aren't we considered friends? No, I don't have a friend like you. In order to hide the panic in his heart, little Qing shouted angrily and threw a punch at Xiaochen. In the face of little Qing's attack, Xiaochen didn't dodge nor did he intend to defend himself. He simply looked at little Qing calmly. In response, little Qing's fist stopped steadily in front of Xiaochen at the last moment and didn't really hit him. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 2958. Xiaochen smiled faintly when he saw that little Qing's fist had stopped at the last moment. Xiaochen smiled faintly when he saw that little Qing's fist had stopped at the last moment. In response, little Qing couldn't help but blush as she said proudly, "Don't worry." What do you mean by that? Do you think I don't dare to kill you? Isn't it too serious to talk about killing between friends? Who's your friend? I said we're not friends. Little Qing refused to admit it no matter what, but Xiaochen had already caught the look of panic in his eyes. Xiaochen was amused by the fact that little Qing refused to admit it. He wondered why he had never realized that little Qing could be so arrogant. Little Qing clearly thought so, but he refused to admit it. Was he afraid that Xiaochen would mock him? Xiaochen had no intention of fighting with little Qing because it wasn't necessary. Why should friends fight to the death? As for the sentient beings in this world, little Qing had indeed done it. Besides, Xiaochen was certain that little Qing didn't value the sentient beings in this world. Indeed, little Qing didn't value the sentient beings in this world because from little Qing's point of view, the sentient beings in this world were dispensable. At that moment, little Qing made such a choice because he wanted to win too much in the face of the pressure from the primogenitors. To put it bluntly, little Qing broke off their relationship because both of them didn't want to lower their heads. Little Qing wouldn't take the initiative to explain anything to Xiaochen. On the other hand, Xiaochen was secretly upset because of little Qing's actions. It was because both of them were like this that they ended up like this. However, Xiaochen didn't expect little Qing to be under so much pressure in this half a year. Little Qing's personality changed a lot because of him, which surprised many people. It was just like what the beast slaves in Song said. They thought that little Qing had changed, but in fact, the real reason was because of him. A person who didn't know how to express himself could only hide his thoughts completely in his heart. No one else could guess what he was thinking. Thinking of the pressure that little Qing had to bear alone for the past 6 months, Xiaochen's gaze softened. On the other side, Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian, who were also inside the formation, were completely unaware of what had happened between Xiaochen and little Qing. At this moment, the two of them were completely lost. This formation had trapped the two of them to death. No matter what they did, it seemed like there was no way to break out. However, it was not difficult to break this formation. As long as they could find the formation core, they could easily break it. However, the problem was that Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian couldn't find the location of the array. Moreover, what the two of them never imagined was that this so-called nether baleful soul-refining grand formation was actually fabricated by Xiaoqing. This was just a simple trapping array, but it was of a very high grade. It was completely capable of trapping Xiaochen and the others for a short period of time. In the land of living beings, Dongfang Yun and the other two were originally waiting in a formation. However, the three of them soon discovered that the aura emitted from the formation didn't seem to be dangerous. It was said that it could refine the souls of cultivators, but after several attempts, the three of them felt that the aura didn't seem to be harmful. To put it bluntly, it just looked like a bluff. Apart from that, it didn't seem to have any other use. This formation is a little strange, Moe said. He had long discovered that something was wrong, but he didn't dare to be careless. However, this formation really didn't seem to have any offensive power. In response, Dongfang Yun and Ancestor He nodded. What does this spirit of heaven and earth want? Is Xiaochen alright? They couldn't figure out what little Qing was trying to do. What was the meaning of laying down such a harmless formation? In addition, Dongfang Yun was more worried about Xiaochen who had entered the formation. After all, little Qing's strength couldn't be underestimated. The development of the situation confused everyone. On the other side, Old Tree and the other ancient creatures of the land of living beings were also rushing over. Sensing the aura of Old Tree and the others, Dongfang Yun and the other two didn't have time to think too much. When the two sides met, the Stone Spirit Clan's patriarch snorted coldly. Where's the spirit of heaven and earth? Where is it? Old Tree and the others were worried about little Qing's safety. In response, Dongfang Yun snorted coldly. Cut the crap. If you want to fight, let's fight. This time, it was the spirit of heaven and earth that took the initiative to attack. Naturally, Dongfang Yun wouldn't be polite to Old Tree and the others. After all, in the eyes of Dongfang Yun and the others, this was an attack from the land of living beings. With the relationship between the two sides, what else could it be if not an attack? On the other hand, Old Tree and the others' faces sank when they heard Dongfang Yun's words. Little Qing had come to the land of living beings alone. Old Tree and the others were originally worried about her safety. Now that they couldn't see any trace of Little Qing, they were even more uncertain. Moreover, the entire land of living beings was currently enveloped by a huge formation. Old Tree and the others didn't know that the formation was set up by Little Qing. They thought it was Xiao Chen and the others doing. But when they thought about how Little Qing was very likely trapped in the formation, they were shocked. Xiao Chen, Lin Yun, and Mu Lingxian weren't there. It was very likely that they were dealing with Xiao Chen in the formation. For a moment, Old Tree and the others were a little anxious. Old Tree didn't have time to think too much and immediately shouted coldly. The spirit of heaven and earth must be trapped in the formation. Kill them. Dong Fang was clearly stunned when he heard that. Formation? Wasn't Little Qing the one who didn't set up the formation? If they were to talk about being trapped, it was probably Xiao Chen and the others who were trapped. What was wrong with these people from the land of living beings? They didn't even know that Little Qing set up the formation. However, there was no time to explain because Old Tree and the others had already charged over. Seeing this, Dong Fang and the others could only counterattack. For a moment, the two sides engaged in a great battle. A great battle broke out in the outside world. Within the formation, Xiao Chen and Little Qing were still talking. Little Qing still had a proud look on his face, refusing to admit that he was reluctant to part with Xiao Chen. In this regard, Xiao Chen didn't point it out and just looked at Little Qing with a smile. It doesn't matter who was right or wrong in the previous matter. But after this matter, I think I still treat you as a friend in my heart. Humph, who's your friend? I said I'm not. Okay. But I think that even if we're not friends, we shouldn't be enemies. We don't have any conflict. Humph, looking at Little Qing who was avoiding his gaze, Xiao Chen was secretly amused. This was the spirit of heaven and earth. It actually showed such an expression. It was really interesting. However, Xiao Chen also sighed in his heart. He didn't expect Little Qing to have such deep feelings for him. Perhaps it was because he was his only friend. How about it? Sit down and have a drink. After drinking, we can continue fighting. We haven't drunk together for a long time, right? Xiao Chen suggested. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 2959. Xiao Qing took the initiative to suggest sitting down for a drink. Hearing this, Xiao Qing was taken aback at first, but then he said in a panic. Xiao Qing took the initiative to suggest sitting down for a drink. Hearing this, Xiao Qing was startled at first, but soon after, she spoke in a somewhat panicked manner. Humph, I don't want a drink. Although her mouth said no, her evasive eyes had already completely exposed the thoughts in Little Qing's heart. Looking at Xiao Qing's current appearance, Xiao Chen smiled helplessly. This guy really doesn't mean what he says. After the previous exchange and conversation, Xiao Chen had completely understood Xiao Qing's intentions. Moreover, from the beginning to the end, Xiao Qing didn't have any killing intent towards him. Although Xiao Qing hated him, with Xiao Qing's character, he probably couldn't kill him. In Xiao Chen's opinion, Xiao Qing's character was like a child who hadn't grown up, arrogant and immature. Regardless of whether Xiao Qing agreed or not, Xiao Chen grabbed his arm and said with a smile. Let's go, I have a lot of them. You'll definitely like them. For a moment, Xiao Qing seemed to be even more flustered, and Xiao Chen directly said without any explanation. Okay, remove the formation. If there's anything you want to say, just say it. It seemed that he was forced by Xiao Chen, but with Xiao Qing's strength, if he didn't want to, who could force him to do something he didn't like? The formation was removed, and soon, the formation that enveloped the entire land of all living beings was removed. Xiao Chen also saw Lin Yun and Mu Lingxian who had been looking for him in the formation. At the same time, when the two saw Xiao Chen, they were stunned because Xiao Chen was holding Xiao Qing's hand, and they seemed to be very intimate. What's going on? For a moment, the two of them didn't react, but Xiaochen said with a smile. Let's go and have a drink together. I'm afraid we'll have to wait a while. Hearing this, although Lin Yun didn't know what happened between Xiaochen and Xiaoqing, she still looked at Dongfang Yun, Old Shu, and the others who were fighting fiercely. Old Tree and the others had come to rescue Little Qing. At this moment, both sides were engaged in an intense battle. Seeing this, Xiaochen smiled helplessly. He said to Little Green, "Tell them to stop. There's no point in continuing the fight anyway." Little Qing's expression was a little strange, but she quickly stopped everyone. Seeing that Little Qing was safe and sound, Old Tree and the others naturally did not want to continue fighting. After all, Dongfang Yun and the others were not weak. Although there were only 3 of them, Old Tree and the others did not gain any advantage. On the contrary, he had been suppressed from the very beginning. Facing Dongfang Yun's group, Old Tree and the others felt as if they were facing 3 primogenitors. Now that Little Qing had asked them to stop, there was no reason for them to not stop. Seeing that everyone had stopped what they were doing, Xiaochen took the initiative to say, "Let's go and take a look at the land of all beings." When Xiaochen took the initiative to invite everyone to the land of living beings, not only were Old Tree and the others stunned, even Dongfang Yun and Mohe were stunned. Wasn't the land of creation an enemy? Why would Xiaochen take the initiative to invite them into the land of all beings? Wasn't he afraid that they would suddenly attack after entering the land of all beings? One had to know that it wasn't difficult for powerhouses at Xiaochen's level to destroy the land of all beings. The land of all beings couldn't withstand their power at all and would fall apart quickly. This was also why Xiaochen's group was only willing to set the battlefield outside the land of all beings. Because even though the battle was intense in the outside world, the impact on the land of all beings was negligible and wouldn't cause any unbearable consequences. "Xiaochen, you," Mohe said worriedly. In response, Xiaochen replied with a smile. "Don't worry, it's fine. It's not a life and death grudge anyway. Since there's a chance, there's no harm in sitting down and having a chat." Xiaochen was willing to have a chat with everyone. After Old Tree and the others saw that Little Qing didn't object, they heaved an inward sigh of relief. As a matter of fact, Old Tree and the others understood that there was indeed no point in continuing the battle with the land of all beings. After all, Little Qing's target wasn't Xiaochen. Besides, even if Xiaochen's group obtained the land of all beings, they wouldn't be a threat to Little Qing. Unlike the various progenitors, it was impossible for them to coexist. There could only be one progenitors in the spirits of heaven and earth. On the other hand, it was different for Xiaochen's group. Xiaochen's group's power didn't conflict with Little Qing's. Since Little Qing didn't object, Old Tree and the others naturally wouldn't say anything. Shortly after, under the lead of Xiaochen's group, the group entered the land of all beings. Looking at the land of all beings before them, Old Tree and the others weren't too shocked. After all, the land of all beings had just been established and was much inferior to the land of creation. However, what truly shocked them wasn't the environment, spiritual energy, and so on. Instead, it was the feeling that the land of all beings gave them. The land of all beings living here was a scene of prosperity. This was something that the land of creation and the origin world didn't have. It was also the most special place in the land of all beings. This was the land of all beings that Xiaochen had hoped for. How is it? The land of all beings isn't bad, right? Xiaochen asked with a smile as he walked side by side with Xiaoqing. Little Qing replied proudly. "It's all right." That's good." He didn't expose Little Qing. This fellow's personality was like this, and it would probably be very difficult for him to adapt in such a short time. Moreover, it was practically impossible for Little Qing to admit that she couldn't let go of Xiaochen. Therefore, Xiaochen didn't dwell on this issue. It was fine as long as he understood it in his heart. Moreover, Xiaochen also liked a friend like Little Qing. He would just let the past be. On the way to their residence, which was the most important part of the land of all beings, Little Qing said something seemingly unintentionally. The laws of heaven and earth and the land of all beings don't seem to be complete. This wasn't false. Because of the matter with Little Qing, Xiao Chen and the others had directly separated the land of all beings from the laws of heaven and earth. By doing so, they had completely severed the control of the land of all beings. Even cultivators wouldn't be tested by the heavenly punishment when they cultivated and broke through. However, while there were benefits, there were also disadvantages. The development of the land of all beings wasn't complete. This was something that couldn't be helped. Although Xiao Chen and the others' strength had advanced by leaps and bounds and couldn't be mentioned in the same breath, they weren't gods. There were some things that were difficult to do. The power of the laws wasn't complete, so there was no way to solve it. Hearing Little Qing's words, Xiao Chen smiled faintly as if he had seen through Little Qing's thoughts. Then I'll have to trouble you, the spirit of heaven and earth. How about it? Do you want to help me complete the laws of the land of all beings? Completing the laws of heaven and earth was absolutely beneficial to the land of all beings. Xiao Chen wasn't worried about anything. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2960. Xiao Chen asked Little Qing to fix the laws of the land of living beings. Little Qing still had a proud expression on his face when he heard that. Xiao Chen asked Little Qing to fix the laws of the land of living beings. Little Qing still had a proud expression on his face when he heard that. I'm not helping you. It's just something I should do as a world spirit. Of course. Xiao Chen smiled and didn't say anything else. Little Qing didn't refuse. He was willing to fix the laws of the land of living beings. Actually, Little Qing was already prepared to do that when Xiao Chen took the initiative to mention it. However, it was still very difficult for him to admit that he was helping Xiao Chen. After all, Little Qing didn't know how to face Xiao Chen at the moment. It was like two friends who had a conflict and didn't know how to face each other. He wasn't in a hurry to fix the laws of the land of living beings. Since Little Qing had agreed, Xiao Chen didn't think Little Qing would go back on his word. Xiao Chen pulled Little Qing all the way to the hall. After everyone was seated, Xiao Chen directly took out fine wine. Of course, he also prepared delicious food. Xiao Chen sat with Little Qing and spoke with a smile on his face. Actually, we're not enemies. We're friends, right? Little Qing didn't answer. He just lowered his head and drank wine. On the other hand, Xiao Chen continued. Back then, you wanted to learn from the origin world and attack the living beings of the world just to win. However, there's no need for that now, right? I can help you defeat the origin world, and I won't fight with you for anything. After all, you're the world spirit. No one can change that. However, you have to promise that you won't casually kill the living beings of the world in the future. Xiao Chen and Little Qing weren't just friends. More importantly, there was no irreconcilable conflict between them. To put it bluntly, Xiao Chen couldn't possibly threaten Little Qing's position as the world spirit. Moreover, Little Qing didn't have to worry about Xiao Chen's mansion. After all, their strengths were completely different. Little Qing's strength came from the world, while Xiao Chen's strength came from the living beings of the world. One was the world spirit, and the other was the guardian of the living beings of the world. So, there was a condition for cooperation. Unlike the origin world and the land of creation, there was no chance for them to cooperate. Because there was no way to cooperate. How could Little Qing and the primogenitors cooperate? The power of both sides came from the same source. Only by devouring the other side could one become a true spirit of heaven and earth. Therefore, cooperation was impossible. On the other hand, Xiao Chen's team didn't have such a problem. When the origin world was about to be destroyed, Xiao Chen and Little Qing wouldn't have a conflict because of this. Xiao Chen took the initiative to say this. Old Tree and the others below also looked at Little Green with anticipation. They naturally hoped that Little Qing could continue to form an alliance with Xiao Chen. After all, this was the best choice and also the most beneficial choice for both sides. Once the origin world was dealt with, the entire world would return to normal. At that time, Little Qing would become the true spirit of the world and control the world. As for Xiaochen and the others, as the protectors of all living things, they would not pose a threat to Little Qing's rule. As long as Little Qing didn't attack the living things of the world, Xiaochen and the others definitely wouldn't interfere with the world's affairs. As long as Little Qing wasn't a threat, Old Tree and the others understood that she wasn't a murderous person at all. She wouldn't attack the living things of the world for no reason. After all, although the living things of the world had their own consciousness, they were still a part of the world. It was like water and fish. Fish couldn't leave water, but water couldn't do without fish. Both sides complemented each other. Facing the expectant gazes of Old Tree and the others, Little Qing took a sip of wine embarrassedly and said evasively. About what happened last time, I didn't consider it thoroughly. This was an apology to Xiaochen and the others. Old Tree and the others, as well as Sure Song and the Beast Slave, were all stunned when they heard this. Sure Song and the Beast Slave were naturally invited to this banquet by Xiaochen. Although the Beast Slave was almost executed by Little Qing, since everyone wanted to resolve the conflict, it was naturally better to talk things out. Besides, the Beast Slave and Sure Song didn't hate Little Qing. They were just too disappointed in her. For ancient voices like the Beast Slave and the others, their loyalty to Little Qing was unquestionable. They knew Little Qing's character very well. Due to this reason, no one expected Little Qing to say such words. No one had ever seen Little Qing explaining something to someone because with Little Qing's identity and status, there was no need for her to explain anything at all. But now, Little Qing took the initiative to explain to Xiaochen. This also proved how important Xiaochen was in Little Qing's heart. In response, Xiaochen smiled and raised his cup, saying, "Thank you. After drinking this glass, we'll let bygones be bygones. How about it?" "Okay." Upon hearing this, Little Qing didn't refuse. She clinked glasses with Xiaochen and both of them downed the wine in one gulp. Everything that happened before was in the past. In fact, Xiaochen joined forces with Little Qing because they truly wanted to restore peace to the world. Although the three sides seemed to have formed a relatively stable situation, Xiaochen knew that such a situation wouldn't last for long. A battle would erupt sooner or later, so it was better to end it once and for all. The key to ending such a situation was the origin world and the land of creation. Compared to the various primogenitors, if Xiaochen had to make a choice, he would naturally be more inclined towards Little Qing. Making Little Qing a true spirit of the world wasn't a bad thing for Xiaochen and the living beings of the world. Moreover, the two of them were friends, so it wasn't difficult for them to make a choice. Everyone was very happy that they had resolved their differences and formed an alliance again. Xiaochen even smiled at Little Qing. "Next time, we can't attack the living beings of the world. If we form an alliance with our current strength, we won't have to use those methods to deal with the origin world." Xiaochen was joking, but Little Qing still blushed and panicked. She pretended to be displeased. "Humph. I just want to win. I won't do that next time." It was almost impossible for Little Qing to admit her mistake. However, it was already rare for Little Qing to be able to make such a promise. Xiaochen smiled when he saw Little Qing's evasive gaze and how she didn't dare to look him in the eye. In fact, Little Qing really didn't have to use those methods now. Xiaochen and the others' strength couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. They weren't afraid of the primogenitors at all. In this way, if they formed an alliance, it was almost certain that they could defeat the origin world. After all, it was impossible for a single origin world to resist their alliance. However, they couldn't be careless. After all, the primogenitors had many tricks up their sleeves. Who knew if they had any other trump cards? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2961. Everyone was very happy at the banquet. Even little Qing, after her initial arrogance, quickly relaxed. Everyone was very happy at the banquet. Even little Qing, after her initial arrogance, quickly relaxed. Little Qing was very comfortable with Xiaochen. This was also the reason why little Qing was willing to become friends with Xiaochen. At first, because of what happened before, little Qing couldn't let go. She always felt that she didn't know how to face Xiaochen. Before they met, little Qing had always hated Xiaochen. She thought that Xiaochen was heartless and would betray her for the sake of the people of heaven and earth. But after meeting him, little Qing found that she really couldn't hate him, let alone kill Xiaochen. To be honest, Xiaochen was the only person that little Qing didn't want to kill in so many years. Or rather, she couldn't do it at all. She couldn't kill Xiaochen because he was the only friend that little Qing recognized. The banquet quickly eased the tension between everyone, and little Qing and the others weren't in a hurry to leave the land of all living beings. After the banquet, Xiaochen took little Qing back to his residence and arranged a room for her. Seeing this, Qingshuru and the others asked curiously, "What's wrong?" "Nothing, the previous misunderstanding has been resolved." Qingshuru and the others knew what happened. They also knew that little Qing had come to the land of all living beings, but they didn't expect Xiaochen to bring little Qing home. After settling little Qing down, Qingshuru and the others finally understood what was going on after Xiaochen explained everything to them. So that's the case. Qingshuru and the others didn't object to this result. They were even a little happy. At least this could ensure the safety of the land of all living beings. Well, you don't have to worry about these things. As for what happened before, just pretend that it didn't happen. Little Qing waved his hand, indicating that Qingshuru and the others didn't need to worry about these things. In the next few days, little Qing indeed completed the laws of heaven and earth for the land of all living beings. Although everyone would still have to go through the trial of the heavenly tribulation when they cultivated and broke through, it wasn't a bad thing for them. On the contrary, it was beneficial for them. Completing the power of law meant that he wouldn't have to go through the test of heavenly punishment when breaking through. Although this seemed like a good thing, it didn't have any benefits. Everything existed for a reason, and the laws of heaven and earth were just like that. The heavens and earth used the power of laws to decide everything, and all living beings comprehended the power of laws during cultivation and turned it into their own power. This meant that the entire cultivation process of all living beings was incomplete. Low-level martial artists might not be able to see anything, but those high-level martial artists could clearly feel it. Incomplete laws meant that it would be difficult for them to take another step forward. Over time, if one were to cultivate in an environment with incomplete laws, in the end, it would be very difficult for any martial artist in the land of all life to break through to the ancestor realm, let alone become a world lord. Therefore, it was necessary to complete the laws. As the spirit of heaven and earth, it wasn't difficult for little Qing to complete the power of law in the land of all life. Moreover, perhaps because of the guilt in her heart, little Qing didn't just complete the laws of the land of all life, she even gave Xiaochen a lot of origin energy. This origin energy was enough to support the birth of many world lords in the land of all life. It could be considered a gift from the spirit of heaven and earth to all living beings. You're compensating them? It's useless for me to keep it anyway, so I might as well give it to you. He was still so proud. However, after the power of law was completed, many martial artists in the land of all life vaguely felt some changes. Their cultivation realms that they couldn't break through before actually showed signs of loosening, as if they were about to break through. This change made many martial artists wild with joy. After all, a breakthrough in cultivation meant too much to them. Just as Xiaochen and little Qing were putting aside their differences, the primogenitors in the origin world naturally received the news. Xiaochen was very concerned about the origin world's actions, so the primogenitors were naturally very concerned about the land of all life and the land of creation. Therefore, the primogenitors already knew about little Qing's appearance in the land of all life. They originally thought that little Qing had gone there to seek revenge, but no one had thought that things would develop like this. It seems that the spirit of heaven and earth and Xiaochen have put aside their differences. I guess so. Their expressions were somewhat complicated. If Xiao Chen and Little Qing were to form an alliance, it wouldn't be good news for the origin world. They might not have been afraid in the past, but now that Xiao Chen and the others had become the divine ancestors of all life, the situation was completely different. Now, any one of Xiao Chen's group was strong enough to fight against a primogenitor. Especially Xiao Chen and Lin Yun. In a one-on-one situation, even a primogenitor wouldn't be a match for them. Therefore, if Xiao Chen and Little Qing were to form an alliance, it would be a disaster for the origin world. However, although the primogenitors felt helpless, they didn't panic too much. The Qilin ancestors said coldly, "It's expected. There's no need to be so nervous. If they form an alliance, then so be it. We'll proceed according to plan." How's the preparation for the world annihilation deity? Soon. Good. As long as the world annihilation deity appears, our origin world will be invincible. At that time, even if Xiao Chen and the spirit of heaven and earth join forces, our origin world won't be afraid. Okay. He didn't know what the world annihilation deity was, but looking at the primogenitor's expressions, it seemed that they were very confident in him. They weren't even afraid of Little Qing and Xiao Chen joining forces. As soon as he finished speaking, the primogenitor's figures slowly disappeared. At this stage, they still needed to prepare a lot of things. In Qiuzu's courtyard, Hu Huang and Qiuzu sat opposite each other. Hu Huang looked at Qiuzu with a complicated expression. "Aren't you worried that the spirit of heaven and earth will join forces with Xiao Chen and the others?" Hu Huang didn't know what he was feeling. Originally, Xiao Chen and the others were just like him. However, after obtaining the power of all living beings, they had become existences comparable to the primogenitors. Even Hu Huang, an ancient being, could only look up to them now. As an ancient being, Hu Huang was naturally very proud. However, whenever he talked about Xiao Chen and the others, Hu Huang's expression became very complicated. It was because Xiao Chen and the others, who were born in the lowest class, had now become the top existences in this world. Even ancient living beings like them had no choice but to retreat. Back then, when Qiuzu had said that he wouldn't have the slightest chance of winning against Xiao Chen, only God knew what Hu Huang was thinking. Chapter 2962. Hu Huang and Qiuzu were discussing Xiao Chen. Qiuzu shook his head and smiled helplessly when he saw Hu Huang's complicated mood. Hu Huang and Qiuzu were discussing Xiao Chen. Qiuzu shook his head helplessly when he saw Hu Huang's complicated mood. The situation is indeed ever-changing. No one expected Xiao Chen and the others to be like this. Not to mention Hu Huang, even Qiuzu hadn't expected things to develop like this. But even so, what could they do? The origin world could make peace with the land of all life, but it couldn't make peace with the land of creation. Moreover, the relationship between Xiao Chen and Little Qing was rather complicated. Therefore, the primogenitors knew very well that they couldn't compromise, let alone coexist peacefully. Moreover, they'd received news that Xiao Chen and Little Qing had reconciled in the past few days. The two sides had probably joined forces again. As a result, the pressure on the origin world was even greater. The primogenitors had thought of a countermeasure for this. With their own strength, they weren't strong enough to face the joint forces of Little Qing and Xiao Chen. They had no chance of winning at all. When the time came, the origin world would definitely lose. Therefore, the primogenitors had to find another way. Under such circumstances, the creation God plan was naturally born. It could be said that the primogenitors had started the creation God plan half a year ago. The so-called creation God plan was very simple. It was to create a god. They would use all the resources in the origin world to create a god with peerless combat strength. They would use this to achieve the possibility of fighting against the land of creation and the land of all life. Of course, Hu Huang and the other ancient beings didn't know about this at all. The creation God plan was an absolute secret in the origin world. Only the primogenitors knew about it. Therefore, Qiuzhu didn't say anything when he saw Hu Huang's complicated expression. After all, there were many things that even he hadn't expected. In the beginning, they'd thought that creating a new world would be very simple. However, they'd encountered the crazy resistance of Xiao Chen and the others. Moreover, even the world spirit, Little Qing, had interfered. The primogenitors hadn't expected that Xiao Chen and the others would be strengthened by the power of all life. They'd become existences on the same level as the primogenitors. The primogenitors didn't expect this at all. They didn't expect this at all. Things had developed beyond everyone's expectation. Since the new world had been created, the origin world seemed to walk on a completely unknown path. Until now, although the primogenitors didn't say it out loud, they all knew very well in their hearts. This time, they seemed to have done something wrong. They had underestimated the living beings of this world. The beings of the world who had once regarded them as living beings had given them the fiercest resistance in this matter. He originally thought that he could easily suppress everything, but in the end, he found that everything was already out of his control. The primogenitors had no choice but to use their final trump card, the creation God plan, to deal with all of this. One had to know that the creating God plan was the true trump card of the primogenitors. Once it was implemented, the final outcome would be completely out of their control. Therefore, to be able to force the primogenitors to such a state, one could see how great the pressure was. While Qiuzhu and Hu Huang were talking, no one knew that in a small world in the origin world that no one knew about, a red ball of light was flickering with a faint blood-red light. The blood-red light flickered brightly and dimly as though it was nurturing some kind of life. This was the creation God plan. A brand new life was being nurtured in this ball of blood-red light. His power didn't come from the world, nor did it come from living beings. Instead, it came from the souls of the dead. He had absorbed the souls of all the people who had died in the world since ancient times and obtained great power from it. Even the primogenitors were afraid of this kind of power. Therefore, the primogenitors felt very complicated about the creation God plan. Although the creation God plan was a method of the primogenitors, when the life in this ball of blood-red light was truly born, no one knew what the outcome would be. If this was a real life, it would have its own thoughts and the primogenitors wouldn't be able to control it completely. This made the whole thing filled with too many unknowns. For example, what would this life want to do after it was born? Would it be willing to cooperate with the primogenitors? Or would it become bloodthirsty after absorbing so much death energy and only want to destroy everything in the world? No one could guarantee this. The primogenitors wouldn't have done this if they hadn't been forced into a corner. In fact, this ball of blood-red light had existed for a long time. It was the last resort that the primogenitors had left for themselves. However, the primogenitors wouldn't have chosen this step if they hadn't been forced into a corner. The life born in the blood-red light had always been in a dormant state. The primogenitors had only been constantly injecting energy into it. However, they had never thought of awakening it. Now, it was different. The primogenitors had completely awakened it. As for what would be born in this blood vessel, even the primogenitors didn't know. Or rather, they themselves weren't sure what kind of thing they had created. No one knew what would happen if it was born from the power of death. After all, no one in the world could truly understand the meaning of death. No one knew how powerful the power of death was. Everyone knew that death was the end of the world. No one would really study the power of death. The origin world was taking a huge gamble this time because they weren't sure if they had created a helper or a monster that could destroy everything. Xiao Chen and the others naturally didn't know about all this. After all, it was a secret in the origin world. Xiao Chen and the others couldn't find anything even if they wanted to investigate. At that moment, Xiao Chen and Little Qing were sitting together and chatting in the land of all beings. Ever since the two of them had buried the hatchet, Xiao Chen and Little Qing had been chatting. Although Little Qing was arrogant, she seemed to have recovered quickly. At least for now, Little Qing seemed to be very happy. the old tree and the others had returned to the land of creation while little Qing was temporarily staying in the land of living beings. Although she said she wanted to help Xiaochen complete the laws of heaven and earth, how could Xiaochen not know that little Qing just didn't want to leave so soon? Of course, Xiaochen did not point it out. This guy was very arrogant now, and he was stubborn about many things. Xiaochen was also quite helpless about it. Xiaochen could feel how much little Qing valued him. At the same time, he cherished such a friendship. Moreover, little Qing was a spirit of heaven and earth. Befriending her wouldn't bring any harm to Xiaochen and all living beings. It could even be said that all living beings in this world couldn't live without little Qing's protection. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.